Okay, great. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the planning board meeting for December 1st, 2020. Before we get started, I just need to read a few notes here. I am Carrie Martinek, the chair of the planning board. This open meeting of the planning board is being conducted remotely consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, the town of Northborough has been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of the planning board are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows the planning board to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to the Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed in the agenda, by tuning into cable access television government channels, Verizon Channel 30 or Charter Channel 192, or by visiting the town's website and going to the Department of Cable Access Television and click what's playing live. If you're on the phone, you can dial *9 to raise your hand. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. Let's see, I will now confirm that board members and persons anticipated on the agenda are remotely present and can be heard. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Millie Milton? Aye. Amy Pretsky?
Aye.
Anthony Zaitin?
Here.
Michelle Gillespie?
Aye.
Great. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Kathy Joubert?
Here.
Bob Federico?
Hello.
And Fred Litchfield?
Here.
Okay, great. Just for some quick ground rules, I'll invite each speaker on the agenda by name to make a presentation and speak to their application. Participants will provide their full name and hold until their name is called. Each speaker will be asked to mute their phone or computer when not speaking and to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate meeting minutes. Those responding will be asked to wait until the floor is yielded to them by the chair. Speakers who wish to respond to the comments of others do so through the chair, taking care to identify themselves. Each vote taken by the board or committee will be conducted by roll call vote. Let's see. After members have spoken, the chair will afford public comments. I'll ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses. Once the chair has a list of all public commentators, the chair will call on each by name and afford 3 minutes. There's no executive session this evening. If there are any technical difficulties, the chair will suspend the meeting while attempts to resolve are made. And if there are any disconnections and reconnections of board members, that should be accurately reflected in the meeting minutes. So thank you. Why don't we get started? First on our agenda tonight, we have the continued public hearing for 425 Whitney Street, special permit site plan approval and special permit for groundwater protection overlay district for Steris AST. I'm going to bring in the attendees. Let's see. Who do I have?
There's Rich Whitehouse from VHB is their engineer.
Oh, he is. Okay.
And I don't know who the phone call is 473.
Okay, so why don't I bring in Rich?
Maybe Rich might know if it's someone from there.
Hi, Rich.
Good evening, everyone. How are you guys doing?
Good, thanks. Do you know who is there another person you're waiting for with the last 3 digits, 473?
That should be Steve Meadows.
Oh, okay. Hold on. If it's not, this person will be surprised. Okay. Stephen, is that you?
Hello.
Oh, okay.
Hello. Sorry.
Hello, welcome.
My laptop.
That review or not?
Yeah. Sorry, my laptop died over the weekend, so I'm on my phone.
No problem. Okay, great. So we have Attorney Medeiros on the line, and we have Rich Whitehouse from VHB on the line from Steris. So as we met last time, we were in the process of finalizing the peer review consultant, and at this point, we have a final peer review person who, Kathy, did we send out the contract to already?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, that's been signed and ready to go.
Okay, great. So I'm sure I assume you know, Environmental Partners was selected after a evaluation by the evaluation team. And then the contractor for the radiation component is CN Associates. So they will be joining environmental partners in the peer review. Kathy, is there anything that you'd like to add in terms of next steps or what we anticipate to happen next?
Sure, we're in the process, as Steve is aware, or excuse me, Mr. Mattis. We are in the process of setting up the 53G account, which is the consulting account for the peer review. So that should be set up, you know, hopefully by the end of this week. And then the environmental partners will start their process. I'm anticipating just with through my discussions with them that it'll be about a month or so, you know, give or take, you know, for them to conduct the peer review. And then once they get, you know, close to finishing, we'll set up a meeting, you know, for them to attend a planning board meeting and make their presentation.
Okay. Any comments or questions from either Rich or Stephen? Any questions from you or comments?
No, I appreciate Kathy's effort, if I may. And I was going to ask about the timeline, but I guess a month sounds probably reasonable in light of, you know, we do have holidays coming up. So, and I don't know if the peer reviewer will reach out to us with if they need any additional information or go through the planning board office. But we're available. I want that to be known.
Okay, great.
So we look forward to getting the report.
Great. Any questions or comments from board members? Any other comments from staff?
No, I'm all set, and I'll let you know, I'll just let the planning board know through an email. I mean, just so that, you know, you're aware of the time frame. As soon as we get the 53G account, like I said, which should be by the end of the week, we'll get that established and start the review.
Okay. This is a public hearing. If there are any public comments, I will take them now. Just raise your hand. Give you a minute. Okay, doesn't look like there are any public comments at this time. So why don't we, if there's no further discussion, it seems like we're on a good path at this point. In terms of continuing to the next time, we have the option, our next two meetings are the first week and third week in January. Kathy, I think you mentioned you thought maybe the first week would be a good check-in point.
Yeah, your two dates for January are the 5th and the 19th, you know, sticking with the first and the third Tuesdays. So I would anticipate, you know, having something, hopefully the full review done, but certainly something done by January 5th. So to me, that makes sense to continue this to January 5th.
Okay, does that work for the applicant?
Yes.
Okay, if they don't have a full report by the 5th, I'm just looking at the calendar. So say they get started next week and then we have Hanukkah and Christmas and New Year's. I mean, is that, if for the applicant, if you come on the 5th and there's not a full report, is that still a good use of your time? Would you want to do the next that next meeting, or do you want to check in on the 5th regardless?
I'm just speaking for myself. I think the 5th, you know, in the interest of time, if this peer reviewer, who knows what anyone can do during the holidays this year, right? But I will take the January 5th meeting date, and if we need the second meeting date in January, that will be available for that as well.
Okay. Okay, so I think at our last meeting we talked about moving our meeting time to 6:30. So does 6:30 sound like a good time for the applicant?
Yes.
Okay, Kathy, do we have any other public hearings scheduled that night?
No, not yet.
Okay. Okay then, so is there a motion to continue the public hearing for 425 Whitney Street to January 5th at 6:30?
I
So
make a
moved.
motion to continue the 425 Whitney Street special permit to January 5th at 6:30.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All right, so we'll give the motion to Millie, the second to Anthony, and then for a roll call vote, all in favor, Anthony,
Aye.
Millie,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Carries an aye. Okay, great. The hearing continues to January 5th. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye. All right, let me move out. Okay, I think that's everybody. Yes, it is. Okay, next on our agenda, we're actually moving on to old and new business. So we start with consideration of the minutes. Let's start with October 6th. Did everybody have a chance to read the October 6th minutes?
Mhm.
Okay, are there any amendments to the minutes? Actually, we know, Amy, you had some amendments to the minutes.
Mhm.
So do you want to walk
Sure.
through your,
Okay, do you want me to walk through them all, or has anyone, all right, I'll walk through them if you want. Do you want me to share the screen? Is that easier, or? Me, it's up to anybody else.
Sure.
Okay, let's see. Okay, can you see that?
No. Oh,
What the-
yeah.
Okay. So, I don't know why this is over here. Okay. So since it's in PDF and not in Word, I had to cut and paste onto a different page. So this is page 1 of the 10/6/2020 minutes. And the application is for a special permit from the ZBA with a technical review from the planning board. So I was just changing it to technical review. And the 4th line down, I added, and according to the applicant, neither were in good condition.
Can
And
we
then for,
just, Amy, can we give you input as you go through this?
okay,
There's so many changes.
sure.
So that is actually not true. The reason that it's in that location for where the driveways are is where the Mass, where the Mass Highway Department wanted it to be, because Route 20 is a federal and state highway. So it wasn't because the applicant chose that. That's because Mass Highway requested it and told them that's where it was going to be. So it's not just the way this sounds like is the applicant said there wasn't another good location, so I put it there. I know that because I was on the design review committee with them.
Okay, well, this was a summary. So that's why, and this was before, and it said, according to the applicant, I just added that because it was a summary of what was said. We didn't have anything from the Mass DOT. And I don't know, did you get a letter from the Mass DOT?
It doesn't matter. What I'm saying is, it's not that the applicant said because it wasn't a good location. It's that's the reality. That's the narrative about it, is that it's because the DOT wanted it that way. So you can ask staff to weigh in, but I don't agree with that comment.
All right, we could take it out, but
Harry, if I could just say something on Amy, on this whole first page where you've added in, and according to the applicant, you've put it in a few places.
yeah.
But it's not just the applicant, it's staff and Mass DOT. So so I think how Melanie had captured it was correct. That it's not just according to the applicant. I mean, this is at the end, towards the end of the process in October. I mean, they had been meeting with design review committee and staff, well ahead of this, of October 6th.
Okay, that's fine. I'll leave it. I did watch the design review and I didn't see any memos from DOT. So
No, we don't have one.
yep.
We don't get memos from DOT.
Okay, so I didn't know any of the information. I did hear him say that he felt was in the best location to close off the two. But if you want to take it out, I'm fine. Leave the first page the way it is.
Okay,
Yeah, so
except
there's
for,
there's three locations, at least on the first page, where I think it needs to come out.
The technical review.
No,
first-
according to the applicant. Your addition of according to the applicant.
I added it twice. It's highlighted, I think.
Yeah, well, and then a third place in the second pair in the,
Oh, that's page 2.
oh, I'm just looking at your page 1 of changes that it's in 3
Yeah.
places on that first page.
See where at the top where it says page 1, that was page 1 of the minutes. And then here's page 2. I had to cut and paste because we don't have a Word document. It was PDF, so it made it tricky. So even though page 1 of the minutes, I added according to the applicant twice, but if you want to leave it the way it is, I'm fine.
okay, but leave technical review. I actually have that as an edit as well. Cross out opinion and make a technical review.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should I continue, or does anyone else have any other different questions on page 1? Do you want to go page by page, or do you want me to go through first?
Sure. What if, I guess we can, yeah, just keep going. Go ahead.
I did have something on page 1, just a quick spelling on it's, I don't know how to describe it, but it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines from the bottom. There will be paved access aisles. I don't think they meant islands, but
Mhm.
there should be AISLES.
Okay, so anything else for page 1?
That was it for me.
Okay.
So page 2, I went to according to the applicant, but we can take that out too. If staff checked it. I mean, when we heard from him, he just made this statement, so I didn't know. But because I didn't check all the setbacks. But then further down on the page where it says 3/4 of the site is in Business West and the southerly quarter is in Residency, I actually went back and listened, and he actually did say 2/3 and 1/3.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any comments? That was paragraph 1 on page 2 of the minutes. Does everybody agree to change it to 2/3 and 1/3?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So paragraph 2, where it's highlighted, it was Mr. Shea did not have the exact size. I went back and listened, and Mr. I don't know how to say his name, Tatro, said the small office was 500 square feet and larger was 7,000 to 8,000 square feet. I added that. And then down further, I said, but in the applicant's opinion, but we can take it out because it goes along with the safe location again. So if we're going to take it out on the first page, we can take it out this page. And then further down, it said she asked how large the buffer is in the back lot as the rear of the parcel also borders residential. I went back and listened to this. And then they talked about 300 feet, and I mentioned that they were listed as 300-foot abutters on the application. And then right here, all I did was cut and paste the bullets from the slideshow, because above in the first 2 pages, it was everything that the applicant had stated. And then it said Ms. Paretsky presented a slideshow. And I just wanted to say what my slideshow stated in the minutes. So I added all the bullets I just cut and pasted. I don't know if people want me to go down them all or just,
No, I
it's
think
up to you.
I
That's,
don't think I have to go through them all.
yeah, that's why I sent it to Kathy in advance, hoping that people could check it if they had time. These were all from the slideshow. So then I deleted this sentence because this was summarizing what I said above in the slideshow.
Mhm.
And then I'm on the page where Mr. Federico disagreed. And so I added some lines. She said, Mr. Federico is a building inspector and he makes the interpretation, but his interpretation can be overridden by the ZBA if they don't agree it's grandfathered use. It is approval of the site plan by the ZBA that sets the use. Yep.
Amy, can I go back to what you inserted from your slideshow? You
Sure.
have a bunch of bullets and then it just
Yep.
randomly starts with 1, 2, and 3.
Yep.
Just so that we're consistent in the minutes. I mean, this is pretty, I mean, I had directed, Melanie to, summarize things, going forward. So, I mean, this is very explicit for the minutes where we really didn't do this for anybody else, but, it's up to the board. It's your minutes, but if you're going to keep it in, I just want to know, it goes from bullets to then just number 1. So what there needs to be some sort of transition or they can all be bullets
Well, the last bullet was a 3-part test where it listed 1, 2, and 3. And that was all from the slideshow. If you want me to go back and fix this and summarize it, I can. I just thought the easiest way to include it was to cut and paste it from the slideshow.
No, all right. So 1, 2, and 3 go under that bullet, are part of
Yep.
that bullet. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So then on the next page, I just added, and I did go back and listen to make sure these things were said. I was here. She discussed the site plan bylaws. She said we're missing such as a dumpster screening, parking lot buffering, and tree height. And then next down, I guess, because I highlighted it, I must have just added those asterisks, the little quotes. And I added the sentence, Ms. Paretsky stated that the applicant mentioned that he was trying to meet halfway, but these are bylaws that say shall, and you have to meet them all the way or ask for a waiver, special permit, or variance. These were all things that were said. When I went and read them, I felt that everything was everything that the applicant said, but it didn't really have a lot of what I said, and I said a lot during this meeting. So in the next paragraph, it said Ms. Paretsky pointed out that they could meet the requirements if the building were made smaller and the use was an allowed use. And then Mr. Tetro stated the next sentence. And then Ms. Paretsky stated she was talking about length and not height. Does anyone have any questions about any of those? So on page 3, I added the end of the sentence. If a letter is written to the ZBA, Ms. Paretsky would like them to look into the use of grandfathering. She didn't think it was a grandfathered use and they're going down the same path they've gone before. And then further down on page 3, it was Ms. Paretsky said she didn't mean to offend anyone. She felt when she watched the design review meeting, she didn't know if the members had a copy of the zoning bylaws because Mr. Reardon and Mr. Varon wanted more buffering and talked like their hands were tied, but they are not. They also mentioned moving plants. Yeah.
Just before you go on, I'm not going to approve any of these minutes if you include what you watched on design review meeting.
I
because
watched it on the planning board meeting.
you're cutting and pasting stuff from design review in here and giving your interpretation. And I just don't think it's appropriate in here.
I
This is
didn't,
supposed to be like a narrative. It's not supposed to be one board member's interpretation, or it's not supposed to be like a detailed of what so-and-so and another person said at another meeting. If this is the way it's going to be, then we have to wait. All of us have to look at design review meeting videos and see if we walk away with the same interpretation.
this
Because
isn't from design. This was what it was said at the planning board. I didn't cut and paste out of the design review board.
So I see what Michelle's saying, that you watched the design review meeting and you brought your interpretation from that meeting, and you did in fact say this at the planning board meeting, but it was an interpretation of the design review, your viewing of design review. So if Michelle's not comfortable with that, what if we just stick with, like, if you want to edit your own quotes?
Okay. Yeah, we can leave out that part.
Does that make that better, Michelle?
I guess,
I mean, I have no problem with board members editing their own quotes. I have a problem with board members inserting things that other people are saying or from other meetings and making it sound like it's an interpretation from the board. I think there's just too much added in from this. In the last paragraph, there's a lot of false statements on the last paragraph that I just wouldn't approve it. I just don't know where you got it from. So
is this the last paragraph right here? That
no,
you're talking-
I can't tell because there's just so many pages of yellow and white. I mean, we can go through it all, but what I'm saying is I think she did a good job as a narrative. And we talked about this at several planning board meetings without getting into like every single detail and just focusing on one member's point of view, is just to do a summarization of it. And I think she did a fairly decent job.
I actually don't agree, because some of the sentences here that I fixed were half, like they didn't even make sense. Like they were cut in half. And it was definitely slated towards the applicant. Like a lot of things are cut out, but I'll take out the Reardon and Varon, but I said it at the meeting. I didn't cut and paste it from design review. I just want to make that clear. But I went back and watched the video and this was what was said. And if you want to take it out, I will, but I don't like it being perceived that I cut and pasted from the design review meeting, because I didn't.
Well, this is coming back from you reviewing a design review meeting. I mean, I don't think all members went and sat and watched a design review meeting to take segments of the design review meeting to put it in the minutes. It's just not what this was intended for.
Yeah, but I didn't watch it to put it in the minutes is what I'm saying.
Okay.
This was October 6th, and I actually said it at the meeting. In the paragraph above, you were saying you were offended, and I was trying to say, that's not what I said. That's
Kathy,
not.
Did you have something, Kathy? Sorry.
Yeah, Carrie, I just wanted to make a comment about something that Amy just said about one of my staff members, as far as Melanie, who takes these minutes, that she slated them or slanted them towards the developer, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. What the board secretary's position is just to attend the meetings. They usually watch the meeting at least one other time, if not 2 times. So probably in total 3 times, to put these minutes together. And it's a summary of what transpired at the meeting. It's not a transcript. It's a summary. So I just wanted to make that correction and put that on record that Melanie does an excellent job, I think, of summarizing and capturing the entire meeting.
Okay. I don't think you meant that she doesn't do a good job. You just wanted to add, I hope, yeah, I think we think Melanie does a good job. It sounds like you just wanted to add some context, but maybe when the cases where we pull in other people. It seems like there's a sensitivity to that. So maybe if we are editing beyond what Melanie catches, then we try not to pull in other people. It sounds like that would make Michelle feel a little better because it is her committee.
Yep.
So maybe we take that one out.
Okay, so take out this grouping right there. The next question section. I mean, when I said she was reading through the site design section and stated it was a framework for design review, so she was hoping they did have a copy and would feel free to follow the bylaws. I mean, I felt without those words in there, it was taken out of context, so that's why I added it. And then on the next part, I'm now reading it to see if you can leave this out if you want. I'm trying to see if this part offends Michelle. It was something that I did say. I made a statement that I was just mentioning when Michelle said she was offended. I was just trying to say that I didn't want to waste time for the design review and the applicants. I didn't say anything bad about design review, but wanted to help by saying if they didn't have a copy of the bylaws, they definitely should. And actually, I feel like this part should be in because the part above, Michelle was saying she was offended by what I said. And this is how I finished it. And I did say it, and I went back and listened to the meeting that I said to Michelle that I'm not trying to offend people. I just didn't want to waste time with the design review and the applicants. And she was just saying if they didn't have a copy of the bylaws, they definitely should. And she felt the design review had more discretion than they thought they had. So I would like to leave that part in because I'm not talking about anyone else. It was what I stated in response to what Michelle stated.
Okay. Are there any other? Oh, there's, yeah.
Yeah. And we can leave this sentence out if you want, because that was what Anthony said. But we can leave it out. This is just because I went back and watched it because we had questions at this meeting about what was going to be on the memo for the next meeting, and there was a discussion. And this part was left out of the minutes, and this is what we used when we went to write the memo. That's why I included that paragraph.
I'm not going to agree to that, Amy.
That's fine, you don't have to agree.
First of all, there's comments in here that are just not true. And I just don't think, I think it's inappropriate to have it in there.
We can leave it out, but I did listen to it, and you actually said it. It was your statement, but since it's your statement, we can leave it out.
Okay. So are there any other edits to this section we just went through? I do not have any. Does any other member have any amendments?
So
Okay.
so everything here in yellow is coming out? Is that what you all just said?
That's what I'm requesting.
Okay, do you want the part that specifically calls out a quote from you, Michelle, or are you against the entire?
This is Amory's summarization of the design review meeting. And we would all have to go back and listen to the hour or 2 hour design review meeting to make sure that everything was captured. That's all I'm saying. I think we've got a plenty in here for an applicant that was already gone before ZBA. And I think we've done our due diligence. I don't understand why all of a sudden, all of these things were pulled from watching videos of design review and put in. And so I would need to have the time to go back and watch and just confirm that what is being stated here, because it's someone else's analysis, right? So like I said, like Kathy said, the secretary goes through this. She's listening in right now. She listens in again. She writes a narrative, a summarization, and that's it. I don't think I've seen in a while to have this many paragraphs added in. I'm just saying, because a lot of it has to do with me, I would just like to go back and make sure that that was what I said. I just got these.
And I just wanted to state for the record that I went back and watched the planning board meeting. I did not cut and paste from design review like Michelle keeps saying. I don't want to argue with Michelle, but I could give you the minutes, the time that I listened to this statement, and it wasn't from design review. I'm okay with taking it out if it makes you uncomfortable, but it was said at the planning board meeting, not at design review.
Okay, so this paragraph right here is a recap of the end of the discussion at the planning board meeting. This highlighted in yellow before us.
Yep.
So what if we take out the part where Michelle talks about design review, that whole section from Miss Gillespie all the way to my name,
Yep.
and just get rid of that? That everything left would be from the planning board meeting?
Yep.
Michelle, does that sound like a reasonable addition, as long as we take out that whole middle section with you and design review?
I'm okay with it, but I think it's a repeat of what the secretary has already done for us. So I don't understand why it has to be put in, but I guess if you want to, I mean.
I can explain why I put it in.
No, that
It's because we were talking about what to put in the memo. And these minutes came out like a while ago. And I made these changes a while ago when I first watched it before we talked about writing the memo. And those statements were made to write the memo. So that's why I thought they had to be in there.
Okay, so, but this hasn't been stated yet in another area of the minutes, all the information on this section here.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay, does that sound okay, Michelle, to take out that middle part there?
yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay.
So what's coming out from where it says Ms., I'm sure Melanie's getting this, but I just want to have a backup.
All the way from Miss Gillespie up to my name.
Okay,
And
so
it
those
probably
two,
should say Miss Martinique instead of Carrie.
so those two sentences are coming out. Okay.
Yeah, so that just summarizes the memo discussion. Okay.
And those were all my changes for that meeting. I mean, for that whole October 6th.
Does anybody have any additional edits?
I just had one quick edit, Carrie, which is on page 5. In two places, this is in the bottom paragraph, we reference 370 and it should be instead 330 and 350. So we'll just make that change in-house.
Okay. I had a quick, let's see. Under, actually page 9, on the continued discussion for preliminary subdivision, it just starts off with Amy made a motion to continue the discussion. So I just wanted to note that we, now I can't read my writing, received a letter from the applicant requesting a continuance or something to that effect. Just to note, however you want to say it, doesn't matter to me, but just to note that we received a letter requesting the continuance. Otherwise, Jamie just made a motion out of the blue.
Where's that?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Oh, yeah, on page 9. It's the last continued discussion. There's just one little paragraph there to continue it. I just wanted to know we received a letter from them requesting.
Yep, we'll add that.
Okay.
Okay, that was it. Okay, anything else?
I had a couple.
Sure.
Second part. So going back to page 4, the first real paragraph, second line from the bottom where it talks about 2 applications are before the board, semicolon, then it says 2, the word 2. I think it should be a 2, the number 2 dash family, because that was a little confusing.
Oh, I see.
Everywhere else, it's referred to as a 2 dash family, 2-family dwelling.
That makes sense.
Can I just go back? And again, Melanie may have gotten this, but on Amy's 1, 2, 3 on her 4th page of edits, right in the middle where it says, so when it comes to the planning board or zoning board, they don't ask, why didn't the applicant have a 50-foot buffer? Did you take all that out?
Oh, I'm not looking at her. Amy, do you have that?
I don't know where you left that. I'm sorry.
Okay, am I on mute?
No, you're,
Okay, I'm not sure where you are. I just closed those minutes, but I'll open them again. What?
so it's in, it's on the 4th page of your edits and it's
Okay.
right smack in the middle. I know you took out because Mr. Reardon and Mr. Veron, I know that came out.
Yeah,
Then it says in yellow, so when it comes to the planning board or the zoning board, why they don't ask, why didn't the applicant have a 50-foot buffer? And now we wasted the design review time and the applicant's time. Did all that come out?
no, I wanted to leave that in because that was my response to Michelle's comments. Like if those are left out, then I didn't respond. I'm just saying I didn't want to waste people's time. That's why I added why I said that at the meeting.
Okay, now I didn't hear whether you voted to take that out or not. So it's staying in. That's all I needed to know.
Yeah, I think we just voted to take out the Mr. Reardon and Mr. Varon part.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Millie, you sounded like you had additional ones.
I did. Just again, some small ones. On page 6, second line from the bottom, it talks about, the sentence starts with, he also explained the truck court. I think that's supposed to be the truck count.
Oh, no, there might have been a court though, Millie.
Wait, you're on the bottom, Millie, towards?
Yeah. Really the sentence from the second from the bottom.
There was that area, that was the truck court area on that site plan.
Okay.
That might be court.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
You got eagle eyes though.
I'm an editor. And I think that was it for me. Small.
Okay. Any other amendments? Okay, so overall, we had a couple of modifications for the first few pages, except for the few notes that said the applicant's opinion. We're taking out anything that is a quote from somebody else, specifically design review, then one quote from Anthony, and then we are taking out at the very end, Michelle, anything that said from Ms. Gillespie onto the design review component there. That's coming out the very last paragraph. Millie, we have two edits from staff, changing 370 to 330 and 350. Millie had a few minor corrections. And then I had just to note that the applicant is requested a continuance on that last page. So that's the gist of the minute amendments. Would anyone like to make a motion to accept the minutes as amended?
I make a motion to accept the October 6th, 2020 minutes as amended.
Okay, second.
Second.
All in favor, Anthony,
Aye.
Millie,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
Michelle,
I,
Carrie is an aye. Okay, so the minutes pass as amended. Next, we have the minutes from 10:20, 11:04, and 11:17. I am not prepared on those yet. I did want to actually go take a close look at 10:20 before approving, and I just didn't have a chance for November yet. I don't know if did everybody else have a chance to go through all the minutes?
I did, but
Millie did.
I have not.
Okay, is it, can we continue the rest of the minutes to next meeting on the 16th?
mhm.
Okay.
Sure.
All right, so next meeting, we'll look at 10:20, 11:04, and 11:17. Okay. Let's see. Oh, next we have the 0 Bartlett Street special permit and site plan decision. So Kathy sent a copy out to the board yesterday. Was that yesterday? I've lost track of time.
Yes, yep.
Okay. Did everyone have a chance to look at the decision?
I did not actually.
I've only got through the first couple pages.
Okay.
Right. I didn't have time to go through it.
Okay. For anyone who did take a look at it, are there any initial questions that we can look at now? Were there any initial thoughts or questions from board members?
I didn't really go through it yet because it was too late and I didn't have power.
Okay, I did think I had a question. So I read through it a couple times and there was so much that I feel like I need to step away and come back to it and look at it again. This is a long one. But there was so much information in it. So thank you for pulling this together. This must have taken a really long time.
I'm not gonna lie.
This looked like a hard one for sure. Let's see. I think the question I had. Just in terms of for all of the letters, do we literally have to list every single letter?
If it came in as information for you during the public hearing, yes.
Okay, no, that's okay. I just wasn't
Yep.
sure. So, all right.
Yep.
And then in some cases where they didn't have like a subject line or anything, does that matter? Or we don't have to say anything about the letters, just that it came?
Right. I took it, I wrote it exactly as whoever was the author, exactly how they addressed it, to the planning board. Sometimes it was to the planning board, sometimes it was to the Northborough Planning Board, sometimes it was to Chairperson Martinek, sometimes it was to Chairman Martinek.
Okay.
Most people had a subject line, some people didn't. So it's all exactly, it's reflected exactly as they wrote it.
Okay. And then we have all the letters from the attorneys. Do we include that as well?
Yeah, they're in here as I broke it down. Usually, because there were so many, I just thought it was a lot easier to read. Under the exhibits, usually we just have the exhibits as far as what the application is and all the plans that were associated with, and then anything else that came in. But in this particular instance, what I wrote down, how I categorized it was, there were the applications that came in, then there was an additional information or additional documents that the applicant submitted, throughout the public hearing process. Then I put together all of the staff correspondence, and that's just, in a chronological order. And then the same thing with the letters and emails received in opposition to the application. So those are all there in chronological order also.
Okay. And then did we have anything from Mass DEP?
No, I'm assuming the Conservation Commission probably did, because DEP, you know, I mean, that's who the Conservation Commission is under. But we didn't have any letter or anything from DEP, not, at least not that I have in the file.
Oh, okay. So for the special permit application, one of the things is just the letter from DEP. So it must be in the application somewhere. Well, I guess maybe if they didn't have over.
No,
15,000
we
gallons
don't have
per
the
day.
letter, Carrie, but it was, you had asked the applicant for a summary of everything that they had received to
Okay.
date, and he put it together in a letter that he sent to you. And I have that listed in here as an additional document that was received by the board.
Okay.
And then in the hearing section, that's listed also.
Okay. So as we're reviewing this, because it sounds like everybody needs to go back and look at it, what would you recommend we should be thinking about? Is there, so maybe if you just share the method to your madness, like when you include stuff in the hearing section, why do you pick certain things out? Is it things that support the decision, or, I don't mean to make this a training class that you're all of a sudden in charge of, but just so what would be helpful in reviewing this to,
Well, I worked in coordination with town council, because as I had said to you in an email, I mean, there's I'm sure you all assume the same thing, that there will be an appeal of this decision. So with that in mind, I wanted to write a defensible decision. I mean, they all should be written that way, and they are. But in the hearing section, what we do is, or what I do, and then we do the same thing for the ZBA. It's really just capturing sort of highlights of those hearings. I mean, you have the meeting minutes, that and the tapes now. Everything's recorded, so anyone can go back to a tape, but that's not what the purpose of a decision is for. So the decision, you talk about, what it is that the decision is for. And then as far as the exhibits, what was submitted for the board to consider. And then any additional documents that came in, whether they were, additional reports or staff reports, residents' letters and emails. And then in the hearing section, what I did here was, because it went for, 3 or 4, I can't remember if it was 3 or 4, but I just summarized, I went through the minutes, and I went through my notes and then summarized what was captured basically at each one of those meetings, and then what the board asked for additional information.
okay.
And then at the next meeting, the information that was provided to you is summarized. And then if there were, additional questions from the board. And then when you go to so that's how the hearing section is done. And then when you go to the findings of fact, that's exactly what it is what are the facts. It's not anyone's opinion. It's what was either, submitted to the board, and then including statements that the board made in making their decision.
Okay.
And then and then some of this lines up with in the findings of fact, when you have a special permit, a general special permit as these, as this was, using the special permit criteria. So you, through various sets of minutes, you all made comments about those criteria. So those are included in the findings. And then obviously, the decision is the conclusion of how you voted.
Okay. Okay, thanks for walking through that. Any questions or comments on that?
So, I mean, hopefully the fact that, that the town council, I mean, this took me over 2 weeks to write.
I know, it's a
Okay?
lot of work.
I mean, there's a lot in this decision, and there's a lot riding on it for the town. Just hopefully the fact that town council has already gone through this, made his corrections as I explained in an email to all of you. It really was like some legalese speak that he provided. I mean, I can send his draft to you if that's helpful. He didn't change the context of this at all, but and all the way down to places where I had a capital and it should be a small letter. I mean,
Okay. Would anyone be interested in seeing the edits from council, or?
Sure. Why not?
I'd be interested to know what he zeroed in on anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I'll certainly send it to you, Karen. I mean, of course, but like, I'll just give you an example where if anyone has this in front of them, like on page 5, number 32, I referenced the letter from attorney Timon. He added in the name of his firm.
Oh, okay.
I didn't have the firm's name in there. A lot of places I had just referenced map and parcel, and he added in assessor's map and parcel. On page 7, there's a couple places where I referred to Mr. Donahue. That was changed to attorney Donahue. Couple of spots where I had a capital S, capital P for special permit. He's changed those to, small s, small p.
Okay. All right. So for me, I mean, I read it a few times, but then I stopped absorbing the information. I was just reading. It was so much to take in. So definitely being able to sit with it and read it again. But thank you. This looked like a lot.
Wow. Is there a time limit for the appeal, or?
Yes, you have, when it involves a special permit, state law allows for 90 days from the close of the public hearing for you to make and file your decision. So you've already made your decision. Now this is just, filing it with the town clerk's office. So you have within 90 days from October 20th. That's when you close the hearing. And then once it's filed with the town clerk's office, I mean, we've never used those 90 days, but once it's filed with the town clerk's office, then the appeal period for 20 days starts. So within 20 days, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You have 90 days to file it?
Yes,
And
to make your decision and file it.
Okay.
Yeah, so from October 20, you're a month, a little over a month into that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would anticipate that, if it wasn't tonight, that it will be at your next meeting, that you would ratify this, and then, Kerry would come in and sign it.
Okay.
And then we'd be well within our 90 days.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, so we don't have to do anything. We're not really continuing it or anything. We will just revisit it December 16th. So if everybody could be sure to take some time before the 16th to really read through this and absorb it, and be prepared to finalize December 16th.
Okay.
So we can get that squared away. Okay, so do we had it on the agenda, but just any additional traffic thoughts or concerns? It was more of a thing that anyone has. Okay. The only thing from me there is I meant to send a note to CMRPC just to see if there's an opportunity to use some of our hours, just to have someone come and talk about just even the region, what's going on in the region and any trends or things we should be aware of just from an educational perspective. So I can, Kathy, if either you or I can reach out to them or CC you or whatever and just see if maybe even Sudartha, if she's willing to come to a meeting and just present any trends or information or anything like that.
So this is regarding traffic, Carrie, or?
Yeah, just traffic, transportation, traffic.
And trends for, I mean, just so I can be specific for her.
Oh, just what's going on in the region, what, for people facing more and more with parcel distribution in general, what are other towns in our region doing? Is CMRPC active in any sort of, not just like from a traffic count perspective, but helping towns navigate through it and providing any insight or ideas, or even if they know of grant opportunities or just insight that they can provide that just gives us a broader view. Okay, so there's nothing really do we know when the master plan implementation committee kicks off?
They actually, I know that they are, the Board of Selectmen interview committee are having interviews tonight. And I believe next Tuesday, I'm not 100% sure on that, Carrie, but I know it was 2 different dates that they were interviewing the people for the at-large seats.
Okay. I mean, even if, I don't know if timing works out, but if it makes sense to use some of their time in that way, they're more than welcome if CMRPC comes and talks about any of that. If the master plan implementation committee has any interest in listening in or joining in, I think that may be obviously something we could offer. I don't know if it's a good use of time or how they plan to spend their time, but that we can always offer.
Are you looking for Central Mass? We'll have them come in January. Is that?
Yeah, whatever time, however the timing works out. I don't know what their schedule is. I don't know with COVID if that changes their availability or how they're strapped or how their staff is stretched over trying to make everything work. So, I realize these are our LPA hours and they try to stick them in and make it work, but they obviously have a lot going on as well. Okay, so why don't we go on to bylaws? The last time we met, we had 11 different bylaws that we looked at. So I want to make sure that we get through and have at least get to a point where we can decide what we want to move forward with. I don't think we necessarily need a perfect bylaw in place. I think if we can take even like 5 minutes per bylaw so we can get through them all, just talking about what the main purpose is, why, if you're the one presenting it, what the main purpose is, what the gist of the changes would be, and then maybe open it up to a board discussion. If there are any questions or comments, or just thinking about how it impacts other bylaws or different neighborhoods or businesses or anything like that, just so we can have a good discussion about it. And if we have, and then of course, if we have extra time, we can swing back around, but just so we get through everything, why don't we take that approach? And then I'm going to start with Millie. You had talked about sober houses. So I didn't know if there's anything else on that you wanted to speak to.
No, just that at this point, I haven't found any towns that have bylaws that specifically address sober houses, but I have found towns that address, them under some umbrella of a rooming house, a lodging house, or a boarding, and they do have some limitations on the number of people, non-family members that they can put into these residences. So I'm just trying to compile a bunch of information and see what we have that might address this, what we can put together. I don't know if you have any other input, Bob, because I know you're kind of working on this with the building, but.
I was at a regional inspectors meeting today with 3 state inspectors, and this is a concern all across the state. They seem to have been able to pigeonhole themselves into kind of a very gray area,
Yeah.
in that in terms of zoning and building, the collective jury, if you will, is still out. In terms of, we spent most of our time dealing with the building codes and how do we classify the structure and the use of the structure. In terms of the use and zoning, if by chance they are a protected class, about the only thing that you're going to be able to do to control is maybe site plan review, parking, that sort of thing. It may come into some sort of a situation where they fall under, the exemptions. Okay, in which case the town would have basically just site plan review. But again, the jury is still out. There are a couple of towns that are pursuing it with the BBRS, which is the Board of Building Registrations and Standards, building code. I haven't seen anything from the zoning side of things from these inspectors in terms of pushing the issue. Basically because we don't know where to push it to. Like I said, they seem to have pigeonholed themselves pretty well in terms of zoning and building. Evidently, they've got a lot of high-priced attorneys that are designed to weasel their way through things. So far, they've been successful, but it's going to take some time for zoning and building to figure it out.
Yeah, I think that's what we're dealing with. And like I said, I think I've just seen some towns try to define them to limit some of the aspects of it, under a boarding house or lodging or rooming. But I haven't seen anything that's been.
You're going to have to be careful with how to pigeonhole it and come up with a quote label.
Yeah.
Because if they're a protected class under ADA, that's federal. And, like I said, whether it's a rooming house, boarding house, intentional community, single family, whatever, you may not have much of a choice. Because even our current bylaws talk about a family as basically any number of people living under a roof with common cooking and cleaning areas.
Okay.
So this is one of those things that's going to take a little time to really figure out what to do.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was a general consensus with all the inspectors today, including the state guys. They still have differing opinions about how to work it, and it just warrants further discussion. That's all it is. Because no matter what happens, it's some of this is going to have to go to court, whether it's housing court or superior court or the SJC at some point, because it's so new or so slippery, I'll say, that nobody's put their gotten their head around this thing yet, but it's certainly out there.
So
Yeah.
Did you have specific bylaws in mind, Millie, for?
I think not specifically, because there so far there aren't any that I can find, but sort of trying to classify them under certain aspects of the bylaws, because a sober house is effectively, it could be put anywhere based on being this protected class. But where they're being put in residential areas is a little bit of a, that becomes then a home occupation if somebody's collecting rent, or is it like an Airbnb? Is it because they're transitional? what does that fall under? Basically any house now can be converted to a sober house, and you can have a lot of people coming in that are trying to, make improvements in their lifestyle and their changes, but does there need to be there's no regulation of these. There's no licensing of these houses. There's no goals. There's no educational factor. They're not a halfway house. They're sort of what happens after you go to a halfway house and you want to reintegrate into society if you have an addiction.
Is it feasible that we are able to put something together by February?
Probably not.
Bob, based on what you're seeing out there, is that feasible? Or is anybody on staff really? I just turned to Bob because you spoke to it. Is it feasible that we come up with something?
I think it's going to take a little longer to figure it out. I can't say that in the past 2 or 3 months that any strides have been made in terms of how to enforce it or how to label it or pigeonhole it or somehow work with it. I think right now is that the word is just getting out to other inspectors, maybe other planners or zoning officers that, this is the situation. Let's look at this together and see if we can come up with, some sort of a pathway.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not seeing that happening by February. It's just, for as long as it's been flying under the radar, it's new to everybody. And if it was a cut and dried thing in the building code, then you can maybe transfer it over to the zoning code and make something of it. But it's not something that it's not something that's going to stand up in court right now, because nobody's gone to court with it yet. And we don't have an official pathway to run any kind of enforcement or special permits or site plan reviews or anything like that.
Kathy,
So
is there anything in the planners sorry to interrupt you, Bob, anything in the planning underground there, or your network of people talking about it at all or facing challenges?
No, not that I'm aware of. Airbnbs, are more of a topic, and how are towns and cities regulating those and handling those. But sober houses hasn't really come on the scene yet. I imagine it's something that's probably been very common in the denser municipality, more densely populated municipalities. As far as we know of, there's one here in Northborough, and I think it's relatively new, past year or 2 years, Bob, I think is when we were made aware of it.
I don't even know where it is.
Oh, really? But so the short answer is no, Carrie. It's not on the radar yet. But with any of the bylaws, whether it's this one that Millie is investigating, or any of the other ones we're going to talk about tonight, it's most helpful to know like what the to start with is like, what's the issue? What is it that we're trying to solve? As opposed to just introducing a whole new bylaw or just coming up with, amended language. Well, why are we doing that? What's the issue? Have we tried to address it in other ways? Can we address it, within the existing zoning? So those are all just things to keep in mind. I know with, Amy submitted several, I know, you have one, Carrie, in particular. Working these past couple of weeks on the ZBA and the planning board decisions, I haven't had time to go through these zoning proposals, particularly the ones, Amy, that you, sent us yesterday. But I will definitely have time, and whether the Bob and or Fred, if Fred wants to be involved in zoning, we'll sit down as staff and come up with some, responses and, our opinions about these. So personally tonight, I don't have anything to say on the rest of these, but as far as the sober houses, that it's not anything yet that I've seen on the planner's radar, but it certainly sounds like it's on the building inspector's radar. So that means eventually it will come to the planners.
One of the things that we were talking about with the inspectors today was the overwhelming concern for the safety of the inhabitants. In that, it's not their own home, it's somebody else's building. And, should these buildings be at least sprinkled? And if it's a change of use from a single family residential to an R3 residential under the building code, does it have to be made handicapped accessible? Those are all things we're trying to figure out. But the overwhelming concern right now is for the safety of the occupants. Right now we've got a house in Northborough that is geared to run upwards of 12 men. And, they say there's no smoking in the building, but they're certainly outside. And who's to say somebody's going to, light one up in the middle of the night? Because I've actually seen evidence of that. But, the concern is, way more important about safety than it is about how many parking spaces we need to cram into the yard. So, the building is looking hard at this, but again, it's just going to take time to figure it out.
Okay. Millie, does that change anything for you in terms of your thinking on this?
No, it actually gives me more concern and just to look at what the, look at what the options are.
Okay.
I just had a quick question.
Sure.
It's probably more for Bob. You had mentioned no one had gone to court with it yet and that you met with a couple other building inspectors. Have any of them written bylaws or you're just talking about it? Any of the other towns?
We're just, at this point, in terms of zoning, we're just talking about it, as actually a second priority. Because like I said, our first priority was the safety of the inhabitants and how do we classify the building to enforce the building code to ensure their safety. The zoning, because of the overwhelming issue with safety, comes in the second place, I have to say it, which is something that can be worked out, and again, once we can get a grip around what type of building this is and how it's dealt with the building code and how it's classified, okay, it may help with clarifications in any forthcoming zoning legislation, either by the state or through local towns. So while the zoning of these places are on the radar, it's kind of a second place. And like Kathy said before, let's see let's see if there's anything on the current set of books that's going to be able to handle the situation. And if there's something missing, maybe we can alter what we already have, or maybe then create something to address it. But there's a lot of moving parts. You've got protected class, you've got AAB, ADA, the building code, the fire code, in zoning. So it's, there's a lot of moving parts to this.
Millie, did you want to verbalize what in your mind was the problem we're trying to solve with this bylaw so that the board understands?
I think as much as anything is being aware that this is something that is starting to crop up, being on the proactive side versus the reactive side before we get caught off guard. If it's something that doesn't come on for this year, it's something I would certainly like to continue to look into, because I think there's a lot of things that have to come in place before we just shoot something out and have it not really work.
Okay. Okay, great. Any board questions on that or comments? Okay, moving along. Signs is Anthony.
So I think for signs, just because we have so much going on and the volume of bylaws this year, I think I would like to pass over signs unless somebody else had some, was really enthusiastic about covering signs. I think also I'd like to, well,
He froze.
Rose.
Now we'll never know. Anthony, you froze, so we can't hear
I mean,
you.
overall, I still think it makes sense for, consistency through town.
So you froze for a minute?
Yeah.
You don't mind just stating back, rewinding for a couple sentences?
Sure.
Uh,
So I think given the amount of volume we have for bylaws this year, I'm going to withhold and not go forward with the sign bylaw unless somebody else feels compelled to move forward with it. I still think it's important. I think it's something maybe down the road. I'd like to be a little bit more researched on it and understand why many towns, surrounding towns, have decided to go this route to mandate front lit signs, and at least on their main streets. So I'm going to say, from my perspective, I'd like to postpone, maybe look at this again next year.
Okay. Any board comments on that one?
I'll just make a general comment, Carrie. I think once the master plan implementation committee starts, and again, we've all talked about how we certainly believe that downtown will be the first project that comes out of, or at least one of the first projects that's going to come out of the implementation committee to start working on right away. So as part of downtown, it's going to be all encompassing, and certainly design and streetscape and facade and signs will be part of that, Anthony, for sure. At least in the downtown district for starts.
Yeah, for sure.
Did any board member feel otherwise about this assigned bylaw for this year? Okay. Okay, duplexes, Anthony, is also you?
Yeah, so I thought about this again, and I know that we've had duplexes on the bylaws for the last many years, and so I don't want to keep drilling down on this, but I do think it's important, primarily for our RC. I don't want to wait on this one, and again, it's protecting these heartlands, what I would consider kind of the heartlands of our town, and as property prices continue to escalate, it's at such a rapid pace, and you see what almost look like teardown houses now are going for a considerable amount of money. I could see people buying multiple properties. I mean, I don't know if it's going to happen this year or in 5 years, but I would like to put some protections in, just in RC, to protect really some of that heart land of our town. And it doesn't have to be no duplexes. I just think conversions on the same footprint, if it makes sense, should be allowed. But starting to combine multiple lots in these, the North Gate areas and that whole area in the middle of the town, it may make sense at least to put some constrictions on there. So I would be compelled to continue to move forward. I haven't written anything up yet. Be happy to do that for the next meeting. In terms of just having, again, no new duplexes, conversions okay, and only in RC.
I have a question about conversions. Maybe it's for you, Bob. Is a conversion within the same walls or within the same footprint? Like, could you tear down and build in the same footprint of the what square footage you have there, or does it have to be within the walls from the outside? Do you know what I'm asking? Do you see what I'm asking?
Would probably be in the footprint of the existing foundation.
Okay. So that's a conversion.
Yeah, it would. In one of the uses is you can tear down a house and rebuild it in the same spot, same volume, same size. And you typically don't need any special permits or anything like that. If you move it, change the footprint, change the size, then you would. In terms of, taking an existing home that would be large and turning it into a two-family, okay, like a duplex, they're gonna have to put up a firewall or fire separation membrane. So some part of the walls, part of the ceilings are going to have some sort of a fire protection from one residence to the other. It's not required in an ADU. but it typically would be required in a two-family, even if you have an existing structure and were to split it.
Oh, Kathy.
Well, now that Bob just mentioned the accessory dwelling unit, so just carrying through this duplex idea of Tony's about no new duplexes, or at least this is how I understood it, no new duplexes in the residential C. Conversion would be okay if it was in the same footprint. But you also have to, be aware that right now you can do an accessory dwelling unit on any residential property in Northborough. So what, I don't know what is it that you're trying to accomplish, I guess, by prohibiting duplexes in the residential C? Is it the look of a two-family, or is it a two-family? Because what you end up with an accessory dwelling unit is you have potentially, you have two families living on a property. So what?
So I guess what my intent is my concern is that that older houses are torn down and lots combined. So you would have a lot of these smaller homes in these areas, and then you get a couple tear downs, lots combined, and now you've got a 6,000 square foot duplex, and that's in a neighborhood that doesn't have those type of lots. And I'm assuming, I think we've talked about this in the past, I'm assuming that's a possibility that you could do that in areas of Northgate and that whole area. That's my intent. And I don't think there's those areas in many of our C, I don't think has a whole lot of space for accessory dwelling. I'm guessing again, but I would think that would be a limited concern or even a possibility.
A couple of things to remember with an ADU. Currently, if you wanted to take a house and do an ADU, you can expand the footprint of the house like a small addition and create an accessory dwelling unit. So you do have the opportunity to expand the footprint. To your comment about people buying up houses side by side and combining lots to build something bigger. What I've been finding in the past few years is actually the opposite, where you have a house on a large piece of property and they buy the property, tear the house down, split it into multiple lots, and then build individual single family homes. I haven't had anybody come to me saying, can we buy two lots and combine it and put up a duplex?
But is that RC? Because there really isn't that many larger lots in RC that I'm aware of.
Anywhere. Actually, the two lots on South Street at the top of the hill, that was a big piece of property that was divided in two. There was one on Whitney Street that was recently done. There was a done on Church Street about 4 or 5 years ago. I think Mr. Black did it was a big old farm or something like that, and they wanted putting 4 or 5 houses in there. So that's been the trend that I've been seeing. Not to discount what you're talking about, because that option I think is very real, but I just haven't seen it, and I haven't even heard of a suggestion about it, to be honest with you.
Right, and that's and I think what I'm trying to do is here to put some protections in for those neighborhoods is my only intent, and that's where my head is at with that.
Any questions or comments from anybody?
Hey, Carrie?
Yes.
Fred? I just wanted to chime in and agree with Bob. I think that what Anthony said about home prices skyrocketing is true, and that as long as those houses, even if they're on small lots and they're older houses, the land value is such that it makes it difficult for someone to financially gain anything by combining two lots. To buy two lots, tear down two houses, and then build one big duplex seems a little bit out of perspective with the home costs that they have to incur in the beginning, at least right now anyways. I think what Anthony's concerned about is more prevalent when home values are way down, and then people can affordably buy 2 lots and merge them into one, but just my 2 cents.
Okay, and so is this, you're only looking at RC, Anthony, for conversions?
Only RC, yeah.
So yeah, I know you didn't write anything up. I'm not trying to force you to come up with something. So what does that bylaw look like to you? Just basically then it would change the use table and we'd have to write something up about conversions, or we used to have something about conversions, right, Kathy?
I don't think so. Conversions, you mean from a single family to a duplex?
Yes, did we?
We have, I'd have to look through the bylaw. I'm not,
That's okay.
I know in the, Main Street residential zoning district, we encouraged other kinds of uses, hoping that someone would not tear down, one of the larger homes, but find a reuse for it, if it was no longer viable to be a single family house. So we have some zoning in place about that, but I don't, I'm not recalling anything off the top of my head that we have something in our zoning about converting a single family to a 2-family.
Okay. When we did 343, that was a conversion, right?
343 Hudson Street?
Yeah.
No, they took they applied for a special permit to do a duplex. So, I mean, I suppose you could call that a conversion. I mean, it was a single family. Maybe it was a single family. I'm not even sure how that.
Oh, it was a single family and they went for a special permit to do a duplex, but I think that one of the conditions were that it stayed on its original footprint, if I recall correctly.
We didn't call that a conversion. I mean, that he just,
right.
He went for a special permit to, to change that over to a duplex.
Okay. There was no, all right. That's what I couldn't recall. If we specifically looked at something.
And I think actually, Anthony, I think he was enlarging that house. I think he was expanding the footprint on that.
Oh, yeah.
So he could square off the house.
Yeah, the house is essentially a U-shaped.
Yeah.
And his plan, if my memory's any good, was to close up that U shape into more of just a regular square or a rectangle.
Yes.
So technically, yeah, he would be expanding the footprint just a little bit, but that permission was granted.
And has since expired.
Yeah, the variance is expired. The special permit, I think, is very close to be expiring if it hasn't already. I'm trying to figure out whether or not I need to condemn the building.
Yeah, it looks bad.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So, okay, Anthony, does that change anything for you, or that's still something?
Well, I mean, I don't want to put any more undue work on anybody to move something forward if the rest of the board doesn't feel it's worth the effort. And I guess I'm thinking more longer term, but so maybe perhaps could we take a straw vote?
Sure. Do you want, I was just going to do that at the end after we go through them all.
Okay, fair enough.
We'll leave you in suspense for a little bit. Okay.
I just want to say something about the protests. We did used to have a footnote. I can look it back up, and it had to do with conversions. I don't have in front of me now. I think it was a little footnote that was in our bylaws, and I have seen a definition for conversions in other towns, whether it be Shrewsbury or I can't remember off the top of my head, but we did. I probably have a lot of papers when we went through the duplex bylaw, and I could share them if we decide to go forward.
Okay, great. Okay, next along, I guess, similar lines is the accessory dwelling bylaw. So for that, the problem that, hold on, I'm going to pull it up here. I'm just going to share my screen. And this isn't meant to be a a perfect language. In fact, I still have some questions about it. And the last time we met, Bob brought up some various concerns about how these can backfire. So I left the meeting, thinking that I wanted to look around and see what other towns are doing, because I do agree that there's a potential to backfire, and I want to be careful about that. And if ultimately the board thinks it's too great a risk, then that's okay. But I at least wanted to put some different options out there. The problem that I'm trying to solve for is that there's a couple of things. So first, it's mostly for the disabled or the senior community, where obviously at a point where we're nearing, full build out, we're at a point where we continue to hear the issue of affordability. And that's especially true for the senior population and others as well, but especially true for the senior population that wants to stay in town. It's just not affordable to do so. They don't need their big house. For the community, for the disabled community, the problem I'm solving for is that just to give them an opportunity to have their own space and allow for a caregiver for them to be there as well if they need it. In some cases, there are the parents taking care of the children. And as the children get older, there's not always that benefit of having a parent that can take care of you. If there's a caregiver involved, it just gives that extra space. Those are the problems I tried to solve for. We already have an accessory dwelling unit bylaw. What I did was, keeping in mind some of the feedback that Kathy and Bob gave last time, I just went through and we don't have to go through this word by word, but I tried to add, what was the purpose of this? What were we trying to do? And put some things in place. And Kathy, I know you said you haven't had a chance to really look at these, and so I don't expect anyone to have the answers. But what I tried to do was put in a couple of different things that required, either proof of ownership, or if you were to sell it, how would you then handle that? I put in a couple different options throughout the document. My initial proposal was actually only going to be to change the size. And that's when we had the conversation about, well, wait a minute, that might end up being a problem you didn't intend. The edits that I had recommended just kind of followed along what was in the state bill for 900. I did some research too about average apartment size in general was about 889 or something like that. So 900 seemed like it was, also in line with the state bill. And Michelle, I'm sure you know better than anybody those kind of stats. But so I changed this here to sort of match up with the state bill. And then just to put some different conditions in place so that it's not, there's got to just be 2 people or 2 bedrooms, but not being able to transfer ownership. I added some items for consideration that we don't have to solve tonight, but again, just thinking about what could those issues be? How do you prove ownership? I don't even know if this would be necessary in terms of, giving Bob the ability to look and confirm compliance if needed. I had a couple questions that, do we need to think about expansion? Is it the 900, that's it? You cannot go no further. And then because I put in considering different letters, that you'd have to submit notarized letters as the condition of the permit. I think that may impact the fact that right now it's by right in RSC. So I think we may have to consider, do we have to change that? Because then how do you kick off even, sending in these letters and how, without the permit process in place, how would we enforce that? And maybe there's a different way to do it. I didn't know. So anyway, that is what I was trying to do here, what I was trying to accomplish, basically making it bigger, making the opportunity for a bigger space, trying to put in a way that we could ensure that it's not abused for other reasons. And obviously some outstanding questions here. But any thoughts to start or comments?
Are you trying to echo the state bill, which has not yet been passed, that is designed for elderly and handicapped? Because the state bill talks about the 900 square feet, half the area of the single family dwelling, for those only those 2 types of situations.
Yeah, so I just use this as a marker for the right number because I just didn't want to make up a random number. But I saw that the state bill went through the additional, they defined what handicap was. They defined what, they put all these definitions were. I'm not proposing this only for that population, although I did put it as a purpose here. It could be for other purposes as well. It could be for to enable, different types of home ownership, I guess, or I'm not sure that's the right thing. Why, what are you thinking, Bob? Did you ask that for a specific reason?
I guess I don't understand what you are trying to protect.
I'm trying to make it so that, number one, not just seniors at the end of the day, but anyone who, it's a good question. I want for seniors who can't afford to live here to have an option to, have that in-law type space or that affordable type space. So they don't have to find somewhere else to go. That it's an affordable housing option for people. Maybe it's not just seniors. So I guess I have to think more about that. The purpose for people who are disabled, it's to open up the ADU use to just make it a little bigger for them so that it's more, they actually can be independent and live there and have that space for a caretaker.
If I'm just throwing this out there, if we currently have a set of specifications for an accessory dwelling unit. If the applicant were to apply for an accessory dwelling unit and ask for more space because they have somebody in their family who is handicapped or elderly and they need the extra space, why wouldn't that be accomplished through a variance?
Could it be?
Why not?
I don't know.
I mean, again, Carrie, I haven't gone through this, but I think if it's a space issue, that's the problem here. Is 200 square, I don't even know what the average size of a bedroom is. Is 200 square feet an average size for a bedroom? Is that what this is getting at? Is that it would be enough for a second bedroom? Is that where the 200 square feet extra comes in?
200 square feet is easily a bedroom.
So if that,
or a bigger kitchen, common area, bigger bathroom.
I mean,
maybe,
just off the top of my head, one way, instead of a variance, Bob, we could look at, adding a waiver that, given the circumstances, the board may, increase up to but not exceed 900 square feet or something. I just don't know what's magic about 900 versus 700, because I mean, it was meant to be, the 700 square feet is what you see in a lot of bylaws. It's meant to be, that it's definitely secondary to the primary home.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, again, if you get into 900 square feet, we have a lot of houses in this community that are 2 and 3 bedroom houses that are, not even 1,000 square feet. So, it's definitely sort of the, maybe World War II era house, but I mean, it's certainly, they sell so quickly in this community and every other community around here. So, I mean, I still think that, 900 square feet is still, to me, could be a single family house. But I'm thinking if that's what the issue is trying to get a larger unit so that a second bedroom could be added, that there might be a way to do that within the existing bylaw by adding in a waiver or something.
Okay,
You know, and right now, the way we have the bylaw is we don't have all of this, extra information, requiring this extra information so that the building inspector then has to become the enforcer of this to find out, who's living there,
right.
did someone pass away, now who's living there, that's why we took that out. It used to be in our bylaws, particularly for 55 and older housing.
Yeah.
But again, those are, I haven't even read this, Kerry. Those are just my initial thoughts with what you're explaining tonight.
Okay, no, that's something to consider. I definitely
That it might be more onerous. Like I'm not aware of, I mean, we don't have a lot of accessory dwelling units, and that is something that has always surprised me.
Yeah.
That once this was put into the zoning in 2009, I'm just so surprised that that we don't, not good or bad, but just surprised that people have not taken advantage of this for something, particularly like say for their in-laws, to add to their property. But
Okay.
that said, when I go back to like, well, so what's the issue? What are we trying to solve? So if it's extra space, we can take a look at that. And maybe there's a way to do that, within the existing bylaw.
Okay, that would be good. Michelle, I have a question for you, not to put you on the spot. Are you seeing anything in the market in general about these types of building or house setups or anything like that, or no? I mean, you obviously can't buy it separately, but do you see a need for them, or?
So you might see in some older homes that were built in the 70s, 60s even, and 80s, that they might have an in-law suite attached to it. So you clearly don't see it in new construction. But, something that, we talk a lot about unintended consequences, and I think Bob might be like, well, how do you police this, right? Someone says, by the way, you might want to look at most of Pine Haven is roughly around 900 square feet to 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty significant size, but so you put on something that's 900 square feet. I guess they apply for it because they have an in-law that's moving in with them. But for some reason, what happens if the in-law passes away and then they start renting it out, or you now creating like an apartment situation that's attached that. So it's one of those situations where, how do you police it on a yearly basis? And then also when you talked about utilities, in most of these situations, utilities can be water, sewer, electric, the meters. They almost have one attached to the house. If you're making two separates, you might even be now creating condos. So it can get complicated along the way as you start to develop it, which I think it's a good idea. I don't know how much time we have for it.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it's worthwhile just trying to look at possibly a waiver and then look at it long-term for like another year to do it right. But it is something that has always been part of the zoning. And when we talked about the rezoning, this was part of it, that we were anticipating this would happen. I'm just not seeing it. Where I am seeing it is in older colonials that were built in the 70s and 80s that might have something that they created for an in-law to stay. And that would have been a bedroom, a bathroom, and maybe another small room.
Okay. Okay, well, that's good feedback. Does anybody else have any other comments or questions? Okay. Okay, so then moving on, the groundwater special permit. So that was just the problem I'm trying to solve for. Let me pull that up. Oops. Sorry, guys. Okay, here we go. So this was just because I think it was a little different than, I think our language wasn't as explicit as it could be. And I think it causes confusion and, a lot of runaround that makes it difficult for us as a board and the applicants as well. So the only thing I really did here, and again, we don't have to finalize the language, was I just wanted to clean it up so that it matched what the other special permits say for language. Just the one concern not concern, but I didn't want to change all the numbers. So I wondered if we could put it up at the very beginning. This kicks off a long section about issuing the special permit. So I was wondering if maybe we could stick it as a 1 to avoid all the number changes. In the event we move forward, I can't imagine we'd have to include the giant bylaw just to show number changes. Would we have to do we have to show that, Kathy, in a huge bylaw? We would. Oh, what a pain. So in any case, logistics aside, this is just language pulled from another section just to tighten this up a little bit. So I don't know if there are any comments or questions on this one. Oops, I can't see everybody. And for anybody, I'm in the old book still. But it is, if you happen to be in the yellow book, it's 7-63. If you're looking at your book. And then if there's no questions or comments on that. Finally, this was one I didn't put anything in for here. It was just, Kathy, I don't expect you had time to do anything for it, but you're looking at this one, right? The special permit. Okay.
Yep.
So this was just the fix where we've had the problem that we're solving for is 2 different boards are the SPGA for the same plan, which is confusing to everybody and may create extra steps and ultimately could lead to even having conflicting conditions at some point. If one board has one condition, another board has a different one. It's just a lot for everybody involved. I don't know if it's more expensive for the applicant as well to go to 2 different, is it more expensive as well?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's double the cost.
Okay. So I think this was, trying to make sure that we just make it easier for everybody. And obviously we don't want someone to pay double the cost if we can solve that here. So I don't know if there are any questions or comments on this one.
So Carrie, can you send this to me?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, hi Bob.
I may be mistaken, but you're talking about special permit granting that shall be the planning board for a duplex. I think in the groundwater bylaws, the requirement for special permit site plan approval from both boards is not just under a duplex situation.
Do we have another situation like that?
That's my question.
Oh, I don't know.
Because if you get a special permit with site plan, I'd have to read into it deeper.
Okay.
Yeah, Bob, I think it's sort of gonna be like a deconstructing a puzzle, I think, for us.
Yeah.
Which we'll do, like I said, Carrie, we'll do in-house, and have something, for the board for the 16th. But, from what I understand, I mean, and it, certainly makes sense staff-wise, but the goal is to have an applicant that's going for a special permit that also has to go to groundwater and then therefore site plan, that they only have to go to one board. They do not have to do duplications, which is what happens right now. So that's the intent, correct?
Yeah, and it would be interesting if there are any other, I can't think of any other cases. I don't know if any board members can think of any circumstances.
I think what Bob might mean, I'm not putting words into your mouth, Bob, but is that there's other places in the bylaw that we have to change.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then the section that I think you're talking about for groundwater, Kerry, is 07010, but I think it's 4E, which talks about the special permit criteria that the groundwater committee goes by. There's 3 criteria.
Maybe. So I didn't catch it there. I thought it would be under, I tried to follow the logic of in other areas where it's just under the general procedures.
because specifically in the groundwater, and again, we'll go into more detail with when we get together to review this, but specifically in the groundwater bylaw, which is on the bottom of page 64 of the current book, which is with the blue page. Carrie, do you need a blue one?
No, I just haven't.
Okay. Well, you just wait a few months and it'll change again. But on the bottom of page 64 are the special permit criteria that the Groundwater Advisory Committee go by. And there's 3 of them.
Okay, if there's a spot that makes better sense, I'm fine with that. Again, the intent is just to clarify. Okay. Any other comments or questions? All right, then commercial storage is Amy. So I'll stop sharing.
Okay, so I'll start sharing. I might start with breweries because they're more fun. I don't know. It doesn't matter which one I start with, I guess. Let's see which one I have up that I can share. All right. Just a second. Did it come up?
Yep.
Okay, I want to see if I can pull up something else. So I just want to see the reason why I went to commercial storage was because, there's been a lot of talk about trucking and warehouses, and our town can have more than just warehouses and trucking. And I went through the bylaws last year and I looked where were some uses that we may want to take out. And commercial storage facility was one of them. And when I go through the community development plan, it talked about taking out those type of uses. And that was back in 2003. So that's why I went and here it is. I have it right on the page. Prohibit uses in the BA, BB West, and B East that have to do with storage or warehousing facilities, freight train terminals, numerous trucks, heavy machinery. So I thought if we're ever gonna try to meet the goals of our community development plan, that we had to go back and take out some of the things that were recommended we take out. So that's where I just pulled out commercial storage facility. And I think Kathy mentioned she was going to go through, and she probably hasn't had time because even I ran out of time doing these and just sent them out yesterday. And to check with the assessors to see if we have any commercial storage facilities even in the town. I don't know if you had time, Kathy, or not. Yeah, I didn't. Yeah.
I haven't yet, Amy.
Okay, so I thought maybe we can look into this more on the 16th once I actually have an assessor's list too, and I considered going through it, but I ran out of time. So, but the summary was I was just trying to follow the goals from the master plan and community development plan, and one of the things mentioned was to take these out. So that's all I had to say about this.
So just, could you scroll to the use table for a second?
Oh, sure.
Okay, so you're saying no in Business West, but still in Industrial and Business South?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. It just seems like downtown business, business east, and business west are our main streets that we've always had the goal of actually making them more pedestrian friendly. And so I was trying to take out the uses that go against making them pedestrian friendly.
Any comments or questions on this one? Okay, so basically it's removing is it just a change to the use table, but the definition is the same?
Yep, definition is the same, just a change to the use table.
Okay. Okay. I don't see any comments or questions. I can't see everyone at the same time, so just give a shout if I don't see you. Okay, nope, doesn't look like any comments or questions. Okay, that was fast. Do you want to go on to contractor's yard?
Sure, let me see what I have here.
I guess it doesn't matter, whatever you have open. I just wrote it down and it doesn't, you don't have to go in that order.
Okay. So here's the contractor yard. I wanted to update the definition of a contractor's yard. I do attend a lot of the ZBA meetings and
wait,
and we've been talking.
I sorry to interrupt you. I still see commercial storage. Are you showing a different one?
I am, but maybe I have to stop share and then reshare. So maybe that's how I have to do it. I'll stop share and then reshare the new one. I figured if I changed it on my end, you guys would just see it pop up. Let me see. Okay. Here we go. Do you see that now?
Yes.
Okay. So I wanted to update the definition of a contractor's yard. A couple times at the ZBA meeting recently, we discussed the contractor's yard as being vague, and it's been used as a catch-all for numerous uses. So on the sheet I emailed out, I actually had looked for a state definition or in the dictionary, but they didn't have contractors' yards listed. So I did find definitions in Ashland, Grafton, and Clinton, and I based one off of that. But really what I did was I took our contractor's yard, which is what they had, and I took out things that we already have allowed in different uses. Like our contractor's yard used to include, well, it does now, lumber yard, things for sale at resale or wholesale. And those are already listed in Business West under like greenhouse and wholesale trade and sale of grain, lumber, or construction. So we already had those things listed in other definitions. I just tried to make the contractor's yard simpler, so it was just a contractor's yard. A premise used by a building contractor or subcontractor for the storage of their vehicles, equipment, supplies, and fabrication of subassemblies. That's what I added. What I added is what I underlined. And then the next part is already in our definition. And I also added all outside storage shall be screened from view from the street and abutting properties, and storage of salvaged materials is prohibited. Because we did have a little clause about salvage materials in ours and I had to fit it in. And I have noticed even at the ZBA meeting last week, the conditions are it should be screened from view. And I want to think I read that in our bylaw somewhere else. So I guess my summary and purpose of it was just to clean up the contractor's yard and take out the other uses in the contractor's yard that actually follow in these different definitions.
Okay.
It'd be easier if everybody just reads what I emailed out and then we talk about it on the 16th, or it's totally up to you if you want to talk about it now, or if anyone has comments.
Yeah, any comments or questions?
I just wanted some clarification. So I've read everything. So on your page where C is, that's our current definition.
Yep.
You're proposing the paragraph above it, where you've underlined is your interpretation of what should be added into it. Plus you took the other things out that you didn't like in there and you thought are duplicated, correct?
Yes, yep.
Okay.
You're right.
I've got a question.
Sure.
And I'm asking this only because in the recent few years that I've been here, there's been a lot of interest in landscapers and where are they going to park and where are they going to put their stuff. Would a landscaper fall under a contractor's yard with your new definition?
Well, I don't know. We could add it in. They're considered well, they're not a building contractor or subcontractor. I guess we could talk about that as a board because some towns I did look at had different definitions for landscaping yards and some of them included them in the contractor's yard. So, but that's a good thing to talk about.
I mean, I guess my intent is that, you know, I guess they have to go someplace in town. And if you're going to take it out of a contractor's yard, which is where we've been kind of pigeonholing them for a while, if the intent is to take landscapers and lawn maintenance out of the contractor's yard, where do we fit them?
Yeah, well, they actually were never listed in the old definition either. So.
Right, but as I said in my email the other day, is that when we get a proposed use, we have to try to find a way to pigeonhole it somewhere. Okay, and like we've all discussed before, the contractor's yard at times is kind of a catch-all because of its vagueness.
Yeah. Amy, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Not to go forward to the next one, but on your next one where you have use variances and prohibited uses, you listed as landscaping business. Are you thinking that you want to ban landscaping businesses in town?
No,
that sort of goes with what Bob is saying because it.
No, that was actually wasn't. I was going forward. I attached a list from other towns, but I thought we should go through them and decide. I wasn't gonna take out landscaping or contractor's yard. Those are further down in the list. Like another town went to letter L and stopped there. And I was going to talk about that, but as that is the next one I was going to talk about.
Yeah, because I did notice on, so after ours, much to what Bob was saying, where you could use C, D, and E, all those seem to be, the commercial greenhouse, wholesale trade, and sale of grain. Those all seem to tie into the sale of something. It's not necessarily a service related. So I think what Bob is trying to say is, what do you do this segment of the population that is providing a service to your community, and yet you don't have a place for them in your bylaw?
Right. That's what actually I was taking out of our definition with the sales, because it's already included in others and the lumberyard. So I guess I always thought contractor's yard was a landscaping yard. I mean, you could put contractor's yard / landscape yard. I wasn't trying to take landscapers out. They were actually never in.
So Amy, something you just said is you took out the sales. So for your definition of contractor's yard, you are proposing that it's only for storage. They can't conduct business. They can't operate their business out of the contractor's yard, and they can't do retail sales or wholesale sales.
Right. I mean, I looked at all the other people who had definitions, and it wasn't sales. It was like what they did now on 50 Southwest Cutoff. It was a place for the building contractor or subcontractor to store their vehicles, equipment, supplies. And I'm assuming fabrication of sub-assemblies means if you're a builder, you might put together a mantle and then you bring it to the site and then install it. I'm not sure what fabrication of sub-assemblies is.
But what's the issue with allowing people to run their business and to have sales?
Well, is a contractor, do they sell things? I'm talking about sales like the building contractors I know don't sell anything at their business. Like they say, okay, we're going to install a kitchen, or we're going to install a paved walkway, but we don't sell the pavers and we don't sell cabinets. That would be like retail sales, or I didn't
Well,
find.
Actually,
The contractors yards, I mean, that we have in town,
Yep.
you know, absolutely sell things. I mean, we just, you know, as the most sort of example to me in the forefront is, you know, Del Greco was a contractor's yard and they sold, you know, masonry supplies as to retail and wholesale. Zecco's yard with all of their mulch and stone, and you know, they sell retail and wholesale. I'm just trying to figure out what's the issue with allowing someone to operate their business.
Well, I thought sale of grain, lumber, construction supplies is what the sale is. I don't agree that Del Greco was a contractor's yard, as you know, because I do think they were retail sales. I went there.
They did. They absolutely had.
They sold.
Yeah, they absolutely had retail sales.
Right, but they weren't a contractor. They
Well,
were retail sales.
Again, I mean, that's what you think, but, or that's your opinion, but,
Well, I read their right up to in the Better Business Bureau, and it said they were a sale of masonry supplies. They weren't a contractor that installed them, because I bought my bricks there and I asked, I said, can you install my sidewalk? And they said, no, we don't do that. We just sell the product.
Yeah.
Just like the granite company at 329, we were told that's retail sales because they're selling granite and they're installing it in someone's house, but they were called retail sales, and Del Greco was retail sales too. But
well, no, I mean, again, that's, you know, I don't want to keep talking about Del Greco because I just don't want to keep talking about it.
Actually,
but I just don't understand what is the problem with sales, with a contractor being able to run his business out of a contractor's yard. I'm just trying to figure that out.
What type of sales do contractors do? Like, contractors do installations.
They sell their services. They want to run their business.
well, there's a kitchen remodeling kitchen company. They sell cabinets and they also install them. I think they're right on Main Street, down across from the White Cliffs, the Arsenal's business. I think it's New England Kitchens or something like that. That's a similar one where they would have wares and they would have display, and they would also do installation, countertops, whether they're granite or not, and kitchen cabinets. And to go back to Del Greco, I think that the Del Greco premises falls under a contractor's yard just as much as any lumber yard would, which was the first thing that was listed, because it was materials that they sold. Same as a lumber yard, it's just instead of wood, it was bricks. And that's how that part that use made sense to me.
I guess when I looked at the definitions online and when I looked at the other towns, a contractor's yard was a premise by building contractor or subcontractor for storage of their vehicles. You know, none of them talked about sales. And it seemed like we had 3 other definitions for sales for the same type of products. So you wouldn't picture the retail, you wouldn't say the kitchen supply person was a retail sale. Like,
I guess you'd have to ask Bob. I mean, they do sales, but they sell cabinets and install cabinets. They might sell them to somebody else to install them, or they might install them as their own contract, you know, kind of like Home Depot has contractors on on a list that you can hire to install a door or a garage door or whatever the other piece that they sell. It's still could be considered a contractor's yard. The other thing with your approach to looking at some of the other towns is you don't know if the other town has something. It may not be a contractor's yard, but maybe some other definition that's their catch-all that covers the things that you're not covered in contractor's yard here. There may be something else. You have to, I would assume, you have to read through their whole bylaw to look and see if there's something else that they use as a catch-all to put things in that don't necessarily perfectly meet the definition of something that's in their bylaw. And in our case, it happens to be contractor's yard that covers a wide variety of things.
So I have a question for you, Bob, actually. Amy, if you scroll down for a second.
Mhm.
So these are in our bylaws right now, like the sale of, what does that belong to? The sale of grain, lumber, or construction? Is that in there now?
Yep.
Okay. So, Bob, if somebody didn't have, so say here's the sale of lumber, but then above in the other description, it was, Amy, if you scroll up for a second.
Yeah.
It was lumber yard. Do you make a distinction in your mind between the two? I guess, how would you be selling lumber without being a lumber yard? I don't know. How do you make a distinction? I'm trying to parse it out myself.
Well, I think you have to go back to contractor's yard and whether or not sales actually occur there. And I would suggest that it does. When I was a contractor, if I wasn't out doing a job for somebody, I was selling my services and all that comes with it, including fabrication of sub-assemblies. I had to have a place to store my tools and equipment. Having an office where somebody could come and visit me and talk about options and designs and materials and whatnot. I think that's a huge part of a contractor's yard. And I was a carpentry specializing in residential, but you could make the same argument for a landscape architect. You can make the same argument for a hardscape contractor. It's kind of, and anytime you have, a trade specifically that has trucks, vehicles, and equipment, and they are always selling their service, okay, the whole thing goes out as one bundle. So, the ability for a contractor's yard to sell the service in addition to wholesale or retail materials, I think kind of goes hand in hand. A lumber yard by itself or a home center by itself, like a Lowe's or Berlin Lumber, if you remember back in those days, those are standalone retail / wholesale establishments. And again, a lot of those other places like the lumber yards, they do some fabrication, they do custom millwork, they do custom moldings, and they may actually have some contractors that they can hire out specifically as an employee of the lumberyard to go perform the service.
Okay, so I want to move on because we need to get through. I'm targeting 9 o'clock to end. So are there any other questions from the board on this one? Okay, so Amy, will you actually just restate the initial problem that we're solving for this one? Maybe we don't have the exact language right, or maybe we haven't picked the right components, but the original, is it right up there? So the original.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when I listen to the ZBA meetings, and I've talked to someone else too, like they just said it's a vague definition, it's catch-all, and it should be tightened up.
Okay.
That's what I was trying to do.
Okay, so why don't we move forward with, I have use variance prohibited uses on my list. Is that handy for you?
Let me see. I'm going to share. Let's see. No, I got the brewery.
Okay.
I gotta find where that other one is. But the brewery I've talked about in the past, and really what I just want to do is add a definition to our, instead of taking things out, let's add some things back in. And a lot of towns now use warehouses repurposed to have breweries, and in their business west, or not business west, in their business zones, they have breweries. I just wanted to add it to our definitions and add it somewhere in our zones. So they were allowed. So if somebody wanted to come in, they wouldn't have to jump through a lot of hoops. I was just thinking of something to add.
Are you looking to specify just breweries, or does that include the distilleries? I think originally it did.
The definitions do, but I just threw this on here for a talk with the whole board, what everybody felt. I mean, I'm not against them. I don't know if anybody else is.
Any comments from anyone?
There are different companies around the state now that have different like fun places that make like fruit vodkas, and that would probably be the distillery, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know. Just trying to add something.
Yeah, I think if the intent was for brewery, I think I think distillery or winery would fit within that same category, would make sense.
Yeah.
And I think it does make sense to make it inviting for these type of businesses to come to town and not have to jump through hoops, as you said.
You might also want to consider coffee roasters.
Oh,
Yep. I think we
Yep.
already have that in town. Or is that
We've,
market?
we've got a couple in town. But if you want to talk about, craft style products
Mhm.
that are consumable, brewery, distilleries, wineries,
Cidery.
coffee roasters, other manufacturers. We actually have a retail olive oil store in town that they don't make the olive oil there. They probably make it someplace else and bring it to Northborough to sell. But if they wanted to be able to do that, I realize it's kind of piling on to what you were originally intending, but if you want to open it up,
Yeah, I'm open up to all of them. Anything fun.
Yeah.
Can you think of how to add it in, Bob? I just took these definitions from, I found Framingham and Medway actually had similar ones, and Grafton has a different way of doing it. But maybe you could go through it and see what you think.
I mean, it probably what you'd have to do is start with a list of definitions and good solid descriptions. And
Yeah.
then figure out what zoning districts where you'd like to see this happen. And then, amend or add this category into the use charts.
Yep.
But I think the key is getting the description in the definitions accurate.
Yep.
One of the other things, I mean, again, with all of these, we will take a look at, or we'll start to take a look at, where something may already exist in the bylaw that just needs to be revised or amended. Something like a brewery, I immediately think of the Board of Health and the Board of Selectmen also, because it's all about, liquor licenses and pouring licenses. I know that there aren't any available in town, but right now, and then we have to look at, what, there's just other, when we're introducing something, this could be this significant, we need to talk about DPW, about water usage. I have no idea, about, water usage, but these are just other departments that we need to bring in bring into the discussion.
So I have a question. I don't know if you know the answer. Do the Board of Selectmen give a number of licenses set by the state, or is it a formula set by the state where you get a certain number, or does the Board of Selectmen have the authority to dictate the number of licenses they can give?
It's actually sort of a combination, Carrie. It's definitely done by population. And, you know, so each town is provided X amount of pouring licenses, X amount of sale licenses. And then in the case of Northborough Crossing, the town was already at its peak as far as how many licenses, you know, that the town had, and they were all issued. So that particular applicant petitioned the state to add more liquor licenses to become available in the town of Northborough, and the selectmen had to be in agreement with that. And then it was, I believe, an actual bill that had to be filed in order to increase the number of liquor licenses, both at the state level and at town meeting. So it's a process to add additional licenses.
Interesting.
I just have a quick question and we can read it. But with the brewery, distillery, winery, tasting room, it says a farmer series pouring license. It's a Massachusetts issued. Is that different? I wonder, like, because this talks about production and a tasting room where they have samples and they can host events, but it says the facility may only sell beverages produced by them and sell permitted beverages to consumers for consumption off the brewery premises. So I'm wondering, this part of it, which is what the second definition is what I see normally allowed in industrial zones. It seems like where they're producing it and they just have tasting rooms. I'm wondering if the Massachusetts issued farmer series pouring license is different than like a liquor license.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I have absolutely no idea.
I don't know, and that may have come from an issue that came up within the Neshoba Valley Winery, I think.
Yeah.
Something about they grew the grapes on site and they made the wine on site, but they couldn't pour it or something like that. I don't remember the exact issue of the case.
Yeah.
But I remember the state legislature had to come up with a solution in a hurry to get this thing settled, because Neshoba is not the only winery in the state.
Right.
I think there was also something out in Western Mass about a brewery. Hard word to say for me. But something about that they were trying to come under like an agricultural exemption. It was a way to use farmland that was no longer being farmed, and the town was trying to encourage the that use, and instead of housing, and there was an issue about whether it could be classified as agricultural or not, because were they growing, you know, the hops and the barley, and you know, were they actually growing it there and then, you know, converting it into, or you know, making it into beer. So there's, you know, again, there's just other people that we need to involve if we're going to pursue this, and that's fine. I mean, that's
Yep. I wonder if there's like another town too, like you could ask if you know, like someone in Marlborough or Framingham or Westboro, they have Cold Harbor Brewing, like, you know, if they have any of the answers.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay. All right. What do you have next available?
Let's see. You never know. Let's see if I can find non-conforming here. Oh, here it is. I didn't do, oh no, I want to do that one last because that's kind of the hardest. Let's see. I think I have to open, I could only open so many. I'll be quick. Use variance, right?
Yep, I have that one.
Okay, it says it's open, so let's see if I can find it on the share screen. Okay. Here it is. Okay. Can you see that?
Mhm.
Okay. Let's see. There were, well, I went to a class on economic development in like a downtown, and they talked about loopholes being use variances and others. And they recommended if you really do want your downtown to evolve the way you want to do it, you should get rid of use variances and the loopholes. And so I was thinking about removing use variances, but I know that's a biggie because we talked about it's a biggie. So then I thought if we weren't gonna go for use variances, maybe we should do what some of the other towns have done, which is there's a section where you have items or uses that are expressly prohibited. So this is a list, and this is the one Michelle was talking about. And I go down the list, and this is, I think, from Framingham, and Medway has one, and there was another town that had one. And I mean, we never are going to want slaughtering or any of these cement factory, fertilizer factories, glue, petroleum. But since we have a use variance, anyone could ask for it, which means it would take time out of staff and boards and the applicant himself, who, as we say, it's expensive to apply for these things. So if your surrounding towns aren't allowing asphalt plants, do we really want that to be a consideration in Northborough? So I thought instead of doing the use variance and getting rid of the use variance, maybe we do what these towns did and just go down the list of these uses, and we can add it to our bylaw too. And I'm not saying that we do all of these. I thought we could go through them because I know, like, you know, like Michelle said, maybe we don't want to do landscaping businesses or contractor yards. We can still allow those in our town. So we don't have to use this list. I was just using it as an example. So I guess, I don't know.
Any comments or questions or thoughts on one versus the other?
You just never know unintended consequences. You think about SA Farms, and he came in and he actually said he was going to be a slaughtering, and then I don't know. His land is for sale now, and you just never know.
Mm-hmm.
So these, I thought we could consider prohibiting in town if we're not going to get rid of the use variance, at least.
So question for you, in the towns that had these prohibited uses, did they also have a use variance, or this was in lieu of the use variance?
No, they must have had a use variance because no use variance shall be granted for any prohibited use. And Medway did the same. And Medway was actually the town that was talked about in the economic development in the downtown. They were used as an example, and they were in, so that's why I looked at their bylaw. And Framingham too, because they just redid all their bylaws. I don't know. I just, you know, I guess I hear a lot of complaints, and I just want to make sure nothing else comes in.
Does so any board members have thoughts on one over the other, or comments or questions?
I just had a question on the list. Since this is Amy's bylaw that she wants to submit, Q has automobile storage. You see quite a few of them because we just happen to be a neighboring community that abuts Route 9 that has several automobile sale places that store their automobiles off-site. Are you saying that that should no longer exist?
No, I just use it as an example. I thought if I wanted to talk about whether you wanted to discuss the use variance or the prohibited uses, and if people were inclined to go forward with the prohibited uses, I thought we could go down and talk about them. And if there were some like vehicle storage yard that you thought we should leave on there, then that wouldn't be on the list.
Okay, all right.
Like, I know in town we don't allow self-storage anymore. So Medway actually went down the list and included most of them, but then they stopped at like L or M, and they included self-storage and a couple others. Say they included self-storage and bulk storage. They had those as prohibited uses. And I know we already prohibit self-storage, so we could add that to the list. You know, anything we prohibit in town. And if you can think of something that's not on this list that you say, you know what, you know, we don't need that in Northborough. And it is totally up to our town. When I talk to CMRPC, they're like, as a town, you decide what do you want to see in your town? What use do you want? I mean, none of these have to be allowed per state regulation, except for the ones that have to be allowed.
Mhm. So the one thing that the prohibited uses doesn't solve for is back to your comment about the downtown zoning. So if you ever want something to look a certain way, for as long as you have a use variance, like you could swap in and then you could put in industrial use down there, right? With a use variance, you could.
Yeah.
So it doesn't solve for that necessarily. However, I do think that we may need more lead time with education on why we would want that and what that means, because I think it may be perceived as, I don't know, it doesn't sound like it went over well before, and I wonder why that is. I don't know if someone who's on the board before, like, is there a reason it didn't go over well the first time?
I think, Michelle, it was the same year as that gun. There was a gun person with the gun range, and everything that year, including the marijuana and the solar, everything was rejected.
I think we can certainly double check this, but I think the use variances, trying to prohibit them, has gone twice to town meeting and failed both times, if I remember correctly.
You know why, Kathy? Was it just like not understanding it or not wanting it, or?
No, I think the second time, and I mean, I can certainly go through my notes, but I remember the most recent time was people just wanting the flexibility, you know, of being able to do, you know, something that they perhaps hadn't thought of yet with their property. And as opposed to, you know, being limited by the use table. And that sort of sounds like an oxymoron, but so I think there was a lot of conversation about that. People not wanting to be limited with what they could do with their property. You know, you get into property rights and it gets tricky.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, I want to make sure we have enough time to cover the last one. So any other comments or questions on this one? Okay. All right. So we have one left, non-conforming.
Okay, here we go. Gotta find it. I have so many files open. Okay, I think this is it. And I even put notes down the side of mine. Okay. So, non-conforming use. There's a class, everybody, in December, and we should all take it because non-conforming use is very tricky, but it's a really good class. And I think it's important to take, especially anyone on the planning board or ZBA. But okay, there were a couple things for non-conforming use. I wanted to add the intent and purpose because I saw that with other towns, that the intent of the bylaw is to ensure that non-conforming uses will ultimately comply with the use requirements of the zoning bylaw. And then I had two things I was thinking of. Either update the bylaw, so if it changes or expands, it actually triggers the non-conforming use bylaw, or consider not allowing changes or expansions. According to this CPTC packet, which was from a class that I took, which I attached in the email that was sent out, that per Mass General Law, a local government may prohibit the change or extension of a pre-existing non-conforming structure and essentially freeze the structures and uses. That's what I would consider, because I don't know, and maybe Kathy or Bob have a better example, but when non-conforming seems to come in front of the board, it's never to go towards conforming. It's always used to expand. The very first case I was on when I started the planning board, it was a non-conforming lot behind Trinity Church where there was no house on it, but maybe there was at one point. So they considered it non-conforming, and it was 5,000 square feet. And instead of building one house on it, they wanted to do 4, because now it's non-conforming. So now we can ask for whatever we want. And that's what I feel like ever since I've been involved with the planning board. It's like, even before with the golf course, that a lot of people who come before the board with non-conforming are trying to go in a totally different direction. And it's usually not to try to conform with our bylaws. And this was another loophole that was talked about in the class I took. So what I wanted to do with our non-conforming is to try to at least trigger it to go in front of the ZBA, so they could decide with a special permit if the expansion, extension, or change was more detrimental to the neighborhoods or abutters. But if not, we could even ask town council or CMRPC how to freeze it. I saw an example in Southborough: non-conforming structures or uses shall not be extended or altered except to make them conforming. But then they did add that with a special permit, you could do other things. But I was thinking, for an example, we could say non-conforming uses or structures shall not be extended or altered except to make them conforming. If we wanted to go down that, I don't know how other people feel.
Okay, so is this the actual bylaw? It's changing the definition and putting in a special permit?
Yeah, and I think I have some questions I'd like to ask town council, because with the special permit required in the non-conforming, it says the zoning board of appeals may grant a special permit to change. I added this, a non-conform, but I won't say it, a non-conforming use in accordance with this section, only if it determines that a change or extension is similar or less detrimental. I guess I wanted to ask town council is, if it's an extension, does that trigger a special permit? What I wanted to do was tighten up the non-conforming to non-conforming use. It's very tricky, so maybe it's better that people read.
I was just
Yeah,
going to say,
Kathy?
Amy, you just took the words right out of my mouth when you said it was very tricky. If the board is going to go down a path of doing anything with the non-conforming section, it took the Attorney General's office 6 months last year to try to figure out what the town of Northborough was trying to do with the zoning bylaw that was approved. And they went back and forth with myself and town council in trying to figure out what was really intended by what was approved at town meeting. So if we're going to go down this path again, we need to figure out what it is that you want to do, and then we need to get town council involved.
Right.
And it can't just be these random questions to town council about well, what do you think? What do you think about non-conforming? Or, we need to propose something to get their input and advice on.
Yep. I mean, I want to ask how we could update this bylaw so it would trigger, like if it's non-conforming to non-conforming use and they want to either change the use or expand the use, I wanted to trigger at least a special permit by the ZBA.
Okay, and the problem we're trying to solve for,
Is because, like I mentioned, in our town, if there's a non-conforming use, a lot of creative people come in and try to use it as a springboard to either expand really in a large way or change the use altogether. So instead of allowing one house, now you can allow 4 because it's a non-conforming smaller lot, where maybe we make it easy by now saying, if you're a non-conforming use, you can only change if you're going to become conforming.
okay, any comments or questions?
And this is probably one that, since it was just emailed out today, it's probably better for people to read and we talk about it at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but which sections are actually changing?
I put this is the very first part of the bylaw, 708.010.
And
I would-
underline is an addition?
Yep, underline is an addition and the strikeout is the cross out. And this I changed if we wanted to include extensions or expansions. I don't know. Extensions and expansions of uses. Like, because at the meeting last week at the ZBA, I did ask Kathy, how come the non-conforming use wasn't triggered between Del Greco and the new use? And she said because the use didn't change. But the use did greatly expand. So according to the bylaws, we can have the bylaw triggered if it expands. And I'm just curious, and that's what I would like to ask town council, is why it wasn't triggered. Like, did this or extension not trigger it? And I started this way before that. So it's this isn't because of the decision last week. This is something that's I've been thinking about since the last.
If you just scroll down for a second, so the parts that are changing, is
Yeah.
it only that, so if you scroll down, I can't see.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So the A is changing, but is B just the same?
Yep,
Okay.
it's the same.
And
I
then,
just left it there in case someone wanted to talk about it.
okay, and then the next part, the 78020, that there are changes here as well?
Yep, the underlines are the changes.
Okay, and highlight is,
Because I had a comment on the side.
oh, got it, okay, that makes
Big-
sense. And then B is changing,
Yep,
okay. And then the next section down, if you keep scrolling.
this I just had a comment. When would this ever be triggered? So if we do have town council, I had some questions. Like, this talks about a variance being required if you do reconstruction, yet in 708.060, you can do reconstruction without a variance. So I don't know.
So
Yep.
it doesn't change, these sections aren't changing, you're just.
No. Yep, I just had them highlighted while we're going through the whole definition, like they all connect together. So like how Kathy and Bob had said, it has a wave effect. I just wanted to put the majority of the section in there that this could affect.
Okay, any comments or questions? Okay. All right, is that it? Is that the end? Is there another one?
No, that's it. But I was wondering, since time is of the essence and February is our drop dead date, maybe I guess we can put together questions for town council for next meeting, or could he attend at the very beginning so we could ask some questions? I guess.
I think to me, the best use of his time would be, you need to figure out what zoning amendments, you're going to propose for town meeting. And then we can concentrate on those. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know if you're planning on going with all of this.
Well, let's go back to, I want to take a straw poll, like go back to the beginning. So to see what we actually want to move forward with, and then we'll at least have a sense of what the board wants to move forward with, or at least make it to the next, at least it passes this initial scan.
I mean, would it be helpful, Carrie, if, like I said, I'm going to, get together with, with at a minimum, Bob and I, to go over all of these. I mean, would it be helpful for you to have, our information and thoughts on this first before you decide which ones you want to go forward with?
Oh, yeah, that actually would be helpful, but I didn't want to make you do work on stuff if we weren't going to go forward with them. From what I'm hearing about the discussion, the only one that's really dropped would be the signs. Unless anybody,
Carrie,
yes.
my recommendation is to not take a vote because there's just too much data that's missing.
Okay.
And you need to hear back from staff, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah, I just
if
didn't
you
want you
hear
to.
back from staff next week, at least they can say to like Millie, maybe we can't do it this year, but here's what you want to look for 2022, right?
Yep.
And then, or maybe they say, Anthony, this is what we think, and the impact will be this. And likewise with yours, if there's no impact and it's very straightforward, then you go with it. If they think that, because always when you're doing zoning, and we haven't talked about this tonight, you always want to really go out and somehow check with your stakeholders and say, how is this going to affect you? And one of them might be like Kathy or Bob recommended, where when it comes to the liquor licenses, you check with the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Health. Do you have any issues with the craft beer, or do you just enhance another bylaw and add it in? So I think it's better to let staff go through with this for 2 weeks and then come back, and then you'll have a better sense of what to move forward, what has priority.
Sure, that sounds good. I just didn't want to make staff do extra work if there were ones we knew right up front weren't going to make the cut. Anthony.
So it's for Amy, I guess. So, and maybe I didn't understand this component of it, but I saw, so you were tightening up contractors' yards, the definitions in one, and then I saw them being prohibited in another. Did I misunderstand that, or was that just two options?
Yeah, well, that was, I definitely want to tighten up contractor's yard definition, but then we have a list of prohibited uses. And when we go down that, we can decide which ones to prohibit. But it sounds like, with it, Bob and Michelle and people's input, we're not going to prohibit contractors' yards. So I'm not expecting to prohibit contractors' yards. That list for the uses was just an example of lists, and we can go down them. But I don't. Landscaper yard, contractor yard is like the same definition, or are there two different definitions for a landscaper yard and a different one for contractor yard? Because I have seen it both ways in different towns.
Okay. All right, so it sounds like, Anthony, I know I promised you a straw poll, but does that sound like a good thing to you if we if
Yeah,
staff?
let's hold off until next time.
Okay, great. So I think that's a good recommendation. And I would say it's safe to not look at signs. Anthony, you withdrew it, and it doesn't sound like anybody really wanted to pursue in his place. So I think that one can safely be off the docket.
And I think that having a lot more to do with the sober houses, I think I would take that one off as well.
Okay. For sober houses, so maybe it's not a rush for this case, but Bob or Kathy, is there any value in like figuring out how it should be on our radar? Like, is this something we should put on the radar for next year? Or are we not even close to, I'm not next year's town meeting, but so that we don't lose sight of it, do we need to bookmark it in any way, or it's already on your radar, we don't need to worry about it?
Well, in terms of sober houses, I have to be honest with you, it's already on my radar because I'm scared for the 12 guys that are in that house right now.
Mhm.
But you don't need the planning board to do it. That's a building code thing, not a zoning. Okay,
Right. And like I said earlier, once the building code gets their hands around it, in terms of how to deal with it, that might have an effect on how the zoning code can be changed or amended or worked to help deal with it. Because the two kind of echo back and forth with each other at times.
Okay.
It basically, like I said before, it's too far into the infancy to figure it out.
okay. So Millie,
Yeah.
you are withdrawing that as a potential bylaw for this year.
Yeah, I think I'd like to do a lot more work on it then.
Okay. Thank you for bringing it up, though. I think it's a good thing it didn't even occur to me. So thank you for putting that on the radar. Well, Bob was already thinking of it, but anyway. Okay, so that leaves 9. Is that okay with staff to take a look at that over the next 2 weeks and weigh in on the 16th?
Yep.
Okay, will you be weighing in on my tiny house on wheels?
I like that.
It's a trailer.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. So thank you, everybody. I am still targeting that we wrap up in the next few minutes. So unless there are any A&Rs, lot releases or bonds,
No, nope, none.
any important subcommittee updates? Okay.
Not for me.
ZBA, wait a minute, I'm on the wrong agenda. I'm sorry, everybody.
Fred, do you think there's going to be a groundwater meeting? Just curious.
No, I don't expect there to be one until January, maybe.
Okay. It's good to know.
And is
The
that
ZBA is not meeting, and I don't believe you have any applications that require groundwater recommendation yet.
Okay, so next ZBA meeting is January 26th. Next planning board means the 16th. Do we need to settle on 2021 schedule or?
I would, if you could, Carrie, maybe just 2 or 3 months out. I mean, unless people have, again, it's usually all about vacation schedules, but, there are a couple of applicants that are asking for, when you're going to be meeting in January and February so they can plan on a filing. But date wise, if you continue with the 1st and the 3rd, it would be January 5th and 19th, February 2nd and 16th, and March 2nd and 16th. So, if people are able to, agree with that at this point, it's just something that I can, the information that I can have to give out to people.
Okay, does that seem okay to everyone? We don't have a choice really, because that's when our license is available. It's for Zoom.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Sorry. For Zoom, do we even have much of a choice based on the nights we're assigned for the license?
No, but it was just a nice way of.
All right, so Kathy nicely gave us our next few months of dates. Are there any issues? It looks like one of them is February vacation week, but are there any issues for anybody?
No, are we changing the start time?
6:30, right?
Okay.
for the next meeting or in January?
For starting the next meeting is 6:30.
Okay.
So you got a 3-hour meeting. That's your max.
That's it. Okay, so it doesn't look like anybody has any issues with those dates.
I had a question, but not about the dates.
Sure.
I wanted to talk about the minutes, and I work with Melanie on some other boards and how she does the minutes, and I think that she could use some direction on whether you want them more detailed or less detailed. It seemed like we spent a lot of time tonight discussing discussion that we had regarding 50 Southwest cutoff that wasn't even a public hearing between the board and the decision that needed to be made. So just if you could just help clarify for her a little bit how much detail you want so she has a good idea going forward, because I know it's frustrating for her to take stuff out and then have it put in and not put in enough and have you add more, and just looking for a little direction on that for her.
I know, that's a good point. We've been torturing the person who writes the minutes for years now. So don't take it personally, Melanie. We've tortured many. I don't know, board, how do you feel about it?
Well, I'm sorry, can I just pipe in here? At your last meeting, or no, 2 meetings ago, I think it was, we talked about doing less. So that's the direction that Melanie, I mean, she listens to these meetings, and then that we talked about in-house.
Mhm.
So, the 2 November meetings and the October 20th meeting, are less than, if anyone has taken a look at those, they're more compact, and they're still just as timely for her to write, well, a little less timely, but because what she does is, kind of has to study it a little bit more to get it narrowed down a little better. But where, she's getting the swing of the less.
Mhm.
So maybe, if at your next meeting, if you're going to look at those other 3 sets, and then plus you'll have tonight's meeting, then you can talk about if you're okay with the new format.
Okay.
I just had a comment too, is I think every meeting's different. Like, I think some of them are easier to sum up, but even the next, like the 1020 was a decision of Bartlett Street, which is a long meeting. And there may be some key facts that we want to have included because it was part of the decision making, but Melanie might not know when she's summarizing because she's not supposed to know that. So I foresee there may be things I want to add to 1020, but it's not going to be because I don't like the job Melanie is doing. But sometimes in these meetings, when you have applicants and applications, if you miss a key point or something is out of context, I just think as the person who's speaking, you want to fix that. And it is really important to me that if, say, like in the last 10-6 meetings, which were before we abbreviated, there was a paragraph where someone was saying something to me and I had a response to that. I didn't want to have it just half and not be able to get my answer to that part. And it has nothing to do with Melanie. Maybe what she pulls out may be just, not part of what the person's talking thinks is important. I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to say, like.
So I think probably my answer to that, Amy, would be we need to summarize everything better as opposed to enlarging the minutes. I mean, there's no other board that has minutes the length that this board does. And there's plenty of other boards that have hearings. And not that it's a competition, but you would certainly win for length of your minutes. And so we're trying, because Melanie works for our department during the day, and then we have her, I think it's with 4 boards. Plus she works, which, isn't your issue, but she works for 2 other communities and does their board minutes. So she has a lot on her plate, and it's just, I just think the minutes are not a transcript. And if you think that someone is being more represented than you, then, I'll do a better job of reviewing the minutes before we send them out, so that there's equal time, I guess, for all parties or something.
Can I just say something? I think that if for some reason if you're concerned about like an appeal or something, you can simply say, if you had, for example, Amy, a discussion about why you disagree with something, then someone could clearly summarize it in 2 sentences that Amy disagreed with this because she felt of the impact it had to do with this, without all the detail behind it. Because you remember right now you have a videotape and you're on YouTube, and so everything is out there anyways. So I think we talked about this before. You can get into 30 or 40 pages, or you can do it in like 5 pages and then just do a narrative, a small summarization about what somebody was saying.
Right, but some of them do have an impact. Like when you read back to the 2008, 2009 bylaw changes, it's good to go back and see, oh, they took this out because of that, or they added this because of that. Certain things are important when you go back in history, or you try to figure something out. And I'm not saying maybe the next ones will be
What I'm
fine.
saying is you can do that in a sentence. You don't have
Yep.
to do that in a paragraph, right? We took
Yep.
out this because we thought of this, but you don't have to do a whole paragraph about why the whole discussion happened, right?
Right.
And that's because I've been on the board where board members have, like yourself, wanted to have a lot more detail. And then I've seen the board fluctuate from a lot more down to almost bullets, which I think would probably drive you guys crazy, to, and Kathy can remember those times, to right now where I think you have a nice middle ground. So as your meetings get into 3 hours, you can go into, a lot of pages of minutes. So I think it's good to do a small summarization.
Okay, well, I think it was a good suggestion to take the last batch that we have, because we obviously have 3 sets, and just kind of figure out, Amy, to your point, sometimes it differs whether or not it's more or less, but at least like it's a good sampling of, at least we have a baseline of what works, so that there's some sort of guidance of what we typically would look for, the level of detail we typically would want to see. And maybe it's evident in the last 3 sets of minutes. So why don't we use that as a barometer, and then come back next on the 16th and just, give a little bit more direction to Fred's point, so that Melanie can have her marching orders and not go too crazy.
I wanted to thank you for considering that, Carrie. It's mostly a selfish point on my part. Is over the years we've had trouble filling that position, and I don't want to lose someone who does a good job, in my opinion, on all the other boards, because she's frustrated about the direction she's given from you guys. So thanks for considering it, and hopefully we can all come to an agreement.
All right. Well, Melanie, I'm sorry about that. You're doing a great job. Stick with us. Okay. Anything else that we need to cover before we adjourn? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Anthony?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
Millie?
Aye.
Michelle?
I
And Carrie's an aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.